Mic check 1 2 1 2. Mic check 1 2 1 2. Can anybody in the chat hear me? Let me see. All right. If anybody can hear me, we are live right now. This is open chat number 4. Please hit the like button as you come in. Share the video if possible. There's no docket today. This is just basically open chat time. So wanted to have an open chat about just anything, tech, politics, whatever, YouTube related. Dahlia, how are you doing? Good evening to you. Yeah, so we had an interesting week. We broke 1,600 subscribers last night. So when we first started the channel, we only thought we were only going to have 250 to maybe 300 subscribers, and ended up at 500, and we thought we were going to top off at 500. And before you know it, before at least we knew it, we ended up at 1,000, and then it went from 1,000 to 1,200 overnight, and then 1,200 to 1,500 a month later, and now we're at 1,600. So we're making progress, man. We're making some progress. So we started these open chats to kind of get away from all of the tech stuff and all of the hard-lined shows that we typically do, or the live streams that we typically do. Everything doesn't always have to be substantially serious. So we can actually relax on this one. Thalia, you want to get on a Hangout? If you want to get on, let me send you the link. I don't know if I have your email address. Yeah, I don't have your email address. Yeah, if you want to get on, Thalia, you can just drop your email into the Hangout, and I can send the link over to you. So yeah, that's what's been going on with the channel. We added, cannabis talk on Sundays with Business Wealth Power owners, content creators, Complex Design, and Anti-Gravity. So they filled that Sunday slot for us because they're a part of the platform, but they had their own content prior to coming here. So having that Sunday slot filled up is it's very beneficial for the channel.
Hey, what's going on, Mike?
Hey, what's going on, dude?
Chilling, man. Just getting in here. What are you discussing, man?
There's nothing in particular, man. Just open chat again, man.
Oh yeah. No, I mean just like right now. What did I just walk in on?
Oh, I'm just explaining, the current events on the channel and what's been going on and things like that.
Okay.
We broke 1,600 subscribers last night.
Nice.
During the Hangout, so that's dope.
Nice. Yeah, slow and steady, man. Slow and steady.
Yeah, absolutely. Just kind of reiterating that Sunday is cannabis talk or cannabis chat. So
yeah, we'll be doing that. I saw that article you sent through, man. That's That's crazy, man. What's going on in Massachusetts?
Oh, it's a liberal battle.
Yeah. Yeah, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I think Talia, she's
Alia.
yeah. You can get my email. Did she post her email?
I think she might have sent it to a different email address, but let me put the Black Brain Trust.
Okay.
What time is the first? Wow.
Okay.
But yes, Talia, I put the link. I put the email in the chat for you. So, yeah. So YouTube has been talking about. You got a lot of yeah, a lot of noise coming back there. YouTube has been talking about going away, doing away with Hangouts, basically decommissioning Hangouts, and I'd be interested in seeing where and what people do as an alternative to Hangouts for their live streams. Typically, we operate off of just live streams, mostly because it's interactive, right? Similar to a webinar, not really a seminar, more along the lines of a meetup, basically. And we don't accept any donations or anything like that. So when we do this, it's like we're just generally doing it because we figure this is the most effective way to communicate our thoughts and our platform to everyone else that's on the receiving end, the subscribers and the viewers and stuff like that. So I say all that to say that when Hangouts goes away August 1st, I'd be interested in seeing what's going on with the manosphere, what people are going to do.
Yeah.
I know some people use OBS software and whatnot, but we don't really use that stuff because for what we do is very minimal. We basically just share a screen and talk. So I don't think we'll go that route, but I do think that we'll have to come up with alternative measures as well. And it could be a variety of things. I think we can actually continue the work that we do on a different platform as well. So
Yeah, I mean, I was looking into that whole thing with and I guess there's a little bit of there's a kind of a misunderstanding of what's happening. I mean, basically what's happening is that the sort of like the Hangout interface that you see it, where you have multiple people who could either like kind of video chat in or something like that. They're splitting that off into something called Meet. Hangout Meet, what is supposed to be part of the G Suite,
yep.
Google Suite, and then they'll have Hangout Chat, right? Now, I don't know if Hangout Chat, one, will incorporate video, and then two, if you can go on air with it. I think basically with Hangout as it is, it won't be attached to YouTube anymore, right? See, so the Hangouts is splitting into like two separate applications, and I think neither one of them will basically be able to enable you to stream through that into YouTube. And so that's my understanding of it. But there's alternatives to do what Hangout does. You know, it's just a matter of people are going to go those lengths to incorporate like a third-party application in order to do it. It makes it a lot more, it's relatively simple as it is right now, right? To just, do a live stream and send people links and they can just do what they do. But I think to go the other route where now you have to like use a third-party application and all that, it might be above the technological pay grade, if you will, most YouTubers to incorporate that. So I do think you're going to see a sizable reduction in like impromptu hangouts and stuff like that, live streams. Or if you do, it's just going to be one person talking, and then it's just going to be a whole bunch of people in the chat. I think what also may happen is there may be some sort of incorporation with like a call-in number, You know, that might be another like quick workaround where you have one, say for example, like one stream, right? So it's like one person just going live, and then through say like a VoIP application, like a Skype or something like that on your computer, you can then broadcast like a conference call. So then you'll have multiple people on a quote unquote conference call or whatever, and the conversations are had that way. So there are some alternatives, but yeah, it won't be what it is now.
Well, keep this in mind that Google Hangouts is a Google product. YouTube is separate from Google in that regard. That Google spins up products, but YouTube is not a product of Google. It's actually a it's its own independent platform. So somehow, some way, the Google developers figured out a way to attach, I guess, through an API, Google to YouTube.
Right.
Which was a very dead simple move for them, right? It was just an API connection. But when it comes to YouTube, YouTube doesn't seem to have anything innovative for themselves. It's basically just a standalone media platform that kind of, the code kind of runs on its own. So they needed to come up with a different solution for Hangouts. And I don't use Facebook. I guess Facebook Live is supposed to be a very robust platform. I know IG Live and IGTV is fairly direct, right? And it's very fluid. If you look at least from my understanding of IG Live and how it works, it's very fluid. So it doesn't have the hangups that Hangouts has, so to speak. So I don't know. See, my thing is this: that Google develops apps and then it shuts the apps down. It's developed probably over 100 apps that they've already shut down over the last few years.
Right.
So you get one app and then you say, "Oh, this is dope," and then next thing you know, Google Plus is shut down. Right? All these other platforms shut down. Early, they go to the graveyard pretty early. You don't have premature deaths on some of these platforms, so it's hard to understand where Google is going with this. But I don't think it's Google that's really driving this. It sounds to me like YouTube needs a better solution in order to keep up with the demand.
Yeah, I was gonna say I think it's YouTube more than anything, because especially if you look at it, is YouTube kind of I see it's pivoting in a lot of ways to become more of like a network or what have you, So like I said, I'm not sure, because then let's take into consideration also, there's a lot of like bandwidth and cloud storage that's getting sucked up by just people blabbering about nothing for 8 hours, right? So how much of that type of content are you going to accommodate? Number one. Number two, I think there's also very much the whole ad placement aspect of it. Again, when you have a lot of content being produced and you can't place any ads on it, you know what I mean? It's kind of like it kind of goes against their revenue model. So I think they're kind of just doing things to kind of curb some of maybe like just the miscellaneous type of content that's being produced. They figure like, okay, if you have the technical wherewithal, to incorporate, like I said, doing like a third-party conference calling or like using OBS or something like that, then you technically are more of a content creator at that point, right? When you go the extra length to go and incorporate an OBS type of platform in your live stream, so that means like the graphic interface that people see, it's going to be all customized and it's going to have all that type of stuff, and it is more content worthy of ad placements.
Well, they take the content that gets created and then they sell, because I think when you sign up for Google and YouTube, or at least YouTube for that matter, they basically monetize your credentials and stuff like that, your PII, what you like and things like that, and sell that to the advertisers. The advertisers pay for it, and then thus the advertisements get pushed to you, right? So there's revenue being made even if you're not really making content in that regard. So if you don't have a YouTube Premium account, all these ads come flying at you, and when you play a video for people who try to monetize their channels, right? So there's a whole entire life cycle that's involved in it. That's very not so much as complex, but it's more. The more they expand out, the more they scale it, the more complicated it becomes.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then so you have to kind of remove some like that miscellaneous stuff, right, in order to kind of stick with the core of what you're trying to do.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Thalia, what's going on?
Hey, Thalia, what's going on?
Nothing much. I was listening to all what's happening on YouTube, and I heard about that long time ago, back when 2000. I would say circa 2016, when I was watching Ptolemy Sotomayor, and they were talking about YouTube, like downsizing and getting rid of unnecessary content or content creators who are not racking up revenue for YouTube or their ad buddies, and censoring what they call hate speech or all that stuff. But they also buddy up with people who they know don't really bring revenue, but they big up their numbers. I was listening to what was happening in that beauty community and all that fiasco going on, and how some people are favored while others are not, and you can see it in the algorithm. Especially like minority content creators versus the white majority content creators in the algorithm per se. So I've been close to the ears of what's been happening long before I got to see BGS and them, but I knew it was coming. I knew that the YouTube I knew before is not going to be there for long. It's going to be like the new TV, and as they say, once YouTube becomes the new TV, there's going to be something else that's going to be popping up, and it's like, oh, it's so much better.
I don't know if I agree with the idea that YouTube will be the new TV, right? So they already have YouTube TV as a platform that people pay for, right?
Yeah.
So that part has already been taken care of. It's already making. I think they've already turned a few $1 billion in revenue just from that alone. And YouTube is supposed to be at least a $200 billion platform. So I think they've covered those bases in terms of TV content and in terms of streaming. But what's happening with the the separate social media side of YouTube is that it's very messy. Anybody could do whatever they want, upload whatever they want, providing that the content is child safe, right? So people, they're never going to stop people from uploading these cat videos and stuff like that, baby videos and stuff like that. And they're never going to stop those people from doing that because they make a lot of money off of that. It drives a lot of attention, a lot of revenue, stuff like that. What my concern is, what's going to happen to the Black manosphere when they can't have these Hangouts anymore and do the things that they were once doing that we talked about as being very questionable content.
Well, I think it's just a natural progression from 2.0 to 3.0, right? I mean, we have our 3.0 mandate in terms of the manosphere, and I think that with YouTube's changes, it still falls right in line, right? So I think that if the nature of what you're discussing, what you're talking about, is more in line with sort of like some of the socio-political mandates that YouTube's trying to follow and stuff like that, then you're fine. I mean, if you're still 2.0 based and everything is still, like I said, I mean, YouTube is a resource, right? So if it's not sort of used in synergy with YouTube's mandate, then what ends up happening is that when they make a change, you may not be able to adjust.
Right.
Yeah, that's what I was gonna say, especially with the Black manosphere. Like I said, I've been in the Black manosphere. I just been like a spectator because I saw what the Black woman manosphere was doing and what the Black manosphere the old heads, and especially what introduced me to it was because of Tommy. I thought Tommy was funny and stuff, but after a while, the shit got old. It wasn't productive. It wasn't like how, the Black Brain Trust is and how BGS is. And in certain areas of the fields, some people are informative, others are just not. They're just not worth my time.
Right, and I think it's fair to say that Tommy kind of falls under entertainment rather than, you know, um, learning or esoteric content. I don't think it's fair to use Tommy for that reason. But what I understand what you're saying. But what I'm saying here is Tommy can go anywhere and still have his subscribers. Tommy
Yeah,
probably
that's
has
basically that.
a quarter of a million subscribers worldwide, so he doesn't really have that problem. But for some other platforms that we see in the manosphere, a lot of those guys can only go so far with their content on YouTube before YouTube decides to start gentrifying it.
Which is true, and I've seen that it is being gentrified. I don't know how the new Black Manosphere will handle it, but I'm sure there is a lot of innovation. I think I see more and more black content creators coming out doing productive things, of
Hmm.
traveling and learning languages. I've seen black content creators doing that, but they're not getting enough revenue because it's not being exposed more. So what I try to do is look at other like black content creators and promote them on Twitter or Facebook or any social media that I can get my hands on. And I think as the black manosphere is becoming more efficient and refined, so does its promotion needs to be put out there.
Hmm.
I believe. I think if more black men content creators want to push out their agenda, they're gonna have to like send out like the ADOS app I heard on the talk. Um, they're gonna have to like start promoting their stuff on their social media to their friends, and their friends will promote it. Or it's like flyers. You're sending it out, hoping that people will catch other people's eye, and it usually does. Because look how far black men content creators has gone, and how much it has changed the game in the gender war, in the ADOS movement, in the fact that you have a lot of outspoken black men calling out like bullshit about them.
Yeah, yeah. C Boogie is in the chat, man. Shout out to C Boogie, aka International Boogie, Dom Gang Division. Yeah, you got to shout him out, man. His growth,
Yep,
man, and all his content, man. That's all hard work, grinding, man. That's all
yep,
organic. It's grassroots. A
yep.
lot of
Yeah.
cats, knocking C Boogie, but he's international now. He's everywhere. He put on more frequent flyer miles than most of these cats
Yeah,
combined.
there's another black content creator. He's in Saudi Arabia. I think he's in Saudi Arabia or in the UAE, and he was talking about how it's no different from America, how everybody got a gang or something, and each tribe got their problem. And he was talking about the whole situation in the Middle East as like going into the West in America. It's just more tribal. Yeah, but I forgot his name. Damn, if I could find it, I gotta find it. I think Art knows it because he was posting it up, you know, to me, and I was like, oh, I want to check this dude out.
Yeah, I think what I suspected what might happen is that if you want to have X amount of recording time for certain types of content, you may have to pay as a content creator to upload that to YouTube, right? Because
No, yeah, yeah.
Complex was saying that they have to pay for that storage. And but from a technical standpoint, I think a lot of storage is just virtual, anyways. They can just spin up
Hmm.
virtual disk and basically just cram it in there and compress it.
Yeah, or use a SoundCloud. My recommendation for those young people, content creators who want to do YouTube, is to like use YouTube, but also have like create your own website on the side so that you just promote what you want to promote, like what Phil is doing. He's promoting his stuff on YouTube, but he has other avenues that you can go to, like his
Hmm.
website. He got a website up. You got a podcast. You're seeing a lot of people doing that now.
I mean,
Yeah.
but I think it's also going to be dependent upon. I'm sorry, Mike. Go ahead.
No, you can go right ahead. I'll go right after you.
Okay. I mean, I think it's also kind of dependent upon what it. Oh, and by the way, MOT, what's going on, sir? Because he just joined in. I think also it kind of depends on what you're doing. Okay, so like we're all like quote unquote content creators, right? But I mean, like, okay, the stuff that we create on average is what, 2 to 3 hours?
3 hours.
As far as like, yeah, like what we do, and then pretty much that's it, right? And so then the majority of the rest of our time is actually spent doing working on projects and things that are related to the content, but is actually done offline, right? Where we're on the phone with each other, and we're communicating through Slack, and all this type of stuff, right? So content creation is going to be relatable to or what you could do on YouTube with regards to your content creation is largely going to be related to what it is you're actually doing. And if all you solely do is create content, right? So that's your thing, that's what you do, then yeah, I think that's where you may have to start to maybe look at using various channels. But then in other regards, if content creation that you do is just maybe just kind of like a part of the overall thing that you do, YouTube may still, I still see YouTube as functional, right? Like I still think, and like I said, if you just use like some third-party solutions, for somebody like us, like the Brain Trust, given what we do, we could use a third-party solution and it really wouldn't be a problem. I don't know if we could say the same for other stuff.
Yeah, we're not for profit. So that's a big difference. Like we don't look for super chats and Patreons and stuff like that. Not that we have a problem with anybody else who's doing it, but I just think that for what we do, it's more nonprofit. So we're not really invested into the platform like other people are, right? They're buying all the microphones and the backdrops and all, nothing against those guys. They're really, really invested into this, so they need a return on their investment. So there's always the need to create content in a way that's going to be that's going to have high ROI. But for us, our ROI really just comes from subscribers and people signing up and people walking away with the feeling like they learned something, right? So feeling like they benefited from the Hangout. That was our ROI initially, and still is to this very day.
So I guess that's the dilemma right now. Those who are just doing it for the fun of it versus those who are doing it as a serious profit. I don't know what YouTube would do for like a Hangout chat like Black Brain Trust or any other content that talks about these things. I log into, was it IDFC? They are basically a tech talk. Like it's kind of like you guys, but they do a lot of tech in their chats. It's various people, big major content creators that talk on. I don't know how this is going to happen. And they were talking about the same thing, how YouTube is going to do this, how the Google Hangout chats are going to be, what would happen to like content like this that's just be free informative. This is something that it's stepping into unknown territory, but I'm sure there's going to be flexibility because I know YouTube doesn't want to lose all their subscribers or people who really are like myself, who are not interested in infotainment, but like information and how to use the information I gain over the years.
Well, I wouldn't say. Well, I guess there's a couple ways to look at it, right? Because you weren't always able to do this on YouTube, right? So there was a period of time that YouTube existed where this wasn't going on, and then you had this, and it did kind of bring a new dimension to it. See, so my assumption, and this is just me kind of just thinking into the future. I think that there will be like another feature added to YouTube, but it'll be native to it. It won't be like what Mike was saying earlier. It won't be a different application that through an API connected into YouTube, right? It won't, and I can understand like their thought of getting rid of it because as you know, as the code sets and YouTube change and evolve, and they start adding new and different features, you have to take a legacy approach to making sure that this other platform, right, that really has nothing to do with YouTube still works, right?
Yeah.
And you know what I mean? So what I could also see is, you know, them getting rid of Hangouts, and then having like some sort of native type of feature in YouTube in the control panel, where you just, you know, send the invites to another YouTube subscriber or YouTube user, and they just join that way. So, I mean, I can also see that scenario. Then see, the news isn't about like what YouTube is going to do per se to accommodate this type of interaction. The news is more about like the change in Hangouts, because Hangouts is a whole different application.
Right.
And then they're actually splitting it into two. Hangout Meet is basically like an upgraded, it's an upgraded variant of Hangouts, and so is Hangouts Chat. So the core application is now split into two, and they're going to have their own functions. They're going to have their own features and all that. So this is more or less about Hangouts. Yeah, not so much YouTube, but I think YouTube is just gonna, it'll be something in there that'll accommodate this, and it'll just be native to YouTube.
I see what you're. I see your point.
What's going on, MOT? Let's get MOT in here. What's going on, bro?
Yeah, what's going on? I think that what they're doing is a positive development. I mean, in any business, you don't have to deal with pitfalls and how to get your voice out. What it is that you're just gonna have to come up with your own solution, rather than just using their all-in-one solution. They're not signing 360 deals with people. People come here, get millions of views, they can go on and do whatever, and they get none of that money.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you know, like all the advertising revenue they make off of you, and then bam, you off to another platform after you can gain a whole lot of subscribers doing something.
Yeah.
So I think it's a positive development. So it's going to show the people who are serious about their craft, no matter what it is, and who isn't, no matter what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if it's not so easy, because here you can come on, post a video, and get millions of views. You really can't do that because they're gatekeepers in society, and YouTube is just a society where there are no gatekeepers. So what I think in order to cut that down is to separate the platform and pretty much make people pay to use Hangouts. I would. Shit, $150 million, $200 million more a month, so that way these people can just stream videos. I would totally make people pay for it. I would.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you know, they do take 30% of your super chats.
Well, it's going up now. It's going up to 35%.
35. Can I get a 40, 45?
So, yeah, it's just that I see it as a positive development, and it's just going to show people, are you serious? Can you do this without nonsense? Mm-hmm. And if you are invested in your nonsense, then it's time for you to put some money in. That's it. And develop your own solutions, like app developers and all that stuff. It isn't hard, but it's not impossible. And most people are not going to invest in themselves in order to put their voice out there. YouTube gave a voice to most people who shouldn't even have a voice. So what they're going to do is kind of dial it back. So that's why, look, you want to get your voice out there, you're going to have to do all the work yourself. You just can't put up a channel, get a whole bunch of people and do stuff. You're actually going to have to do some of the footwork. And actually, right now, it's easier to put out your own app. It's easier to come out with a website. It's easy. What is not easy to do is gain a market. And what it is that YouTube allows people to gain a market without actually paying for it.
Yeah, they see themselves as a PaaS, right? A platform as a service. So, and because they see themselves as a PaaS, as a platform as a service, they're now starting to realize how to leverage it for more profit, because they need more profit to stay ahead. Because I think right now they're outperforming Facebook in terms of viewership and signups, right? I'm not sure about revenue. I think revenue-wise, they're still behind Facebook, but
they had to know that this was coming. They had to.
Yeah,
I knew. I mean, I looked at it. I'm like, dude, listen. These people want to broadcast on my platform. Look, man, I'm gonna have these jokers get $30 a month. $30 a month. You got a whole world who's hooked on uploading whatever content to. You know what? Just pay us $30 a month, and we still gonna run a gang of advertising dollars off of you. So now they're gonna be making an extra $3, $4, maybe $500 million a month, so that way you can have an upgraded version of Hangouts. Well, I would do it.
Yeah, definitely. And you know, the current version of YouTube cultivated this new reptilian sort of demographic, man, that, you know, we haven't seen anything like this before. And they're all over the place, man. Every time you try to step around. I saw one of your videos that you did, man. You was kind of stepping over, you know, the grass. I was like, what's going on here, man? He's trying to avoid the reptiles.
Yeah, I mean, man, the problem is here is that they don't really have control over these. They can just come, upload, and leave. And it's not just this, it's other videos, it's terrorism videos, it's a whole bunch of stuff they just do not have control of. But if they kind of dial it back, so that way you have to create your own stuff, that's a method of control. So that way you have to innovate solutions. Yeah,
they want to destroy Comcast and the other media outlets because Comcast owns NBC, and NBC has a large market share of content that I don't think that YouTube, Google has access to.
Yeah,
that really hurts them. So in order to really outperform, you know, your legacy media platforms such as Comcast and you know, Dish and the rest of these, I shouldn't say Dish, but the other legacy dinosaurs, you have to start cultivating better content for yourself. And I think this is how Hulu was able to survive, because, you know, they have a lot of content. I would say Amazon Prime, I think that's what it is, Prime TV or whatever you call it.
Amazon Prime.
And then you have Netflix, right? Netflix started cultivating their own content.
Making their own, producing their own original content. Yep.
Yeah.
I mean, but the problem here is that, all right, go ahead, man.
Oh, no, you go ahead. I'll say something later.
No, it's just that over here with this particular concept, if they're trying to move into the TV arena, they have to put some type of controls in place so that way they don't, quote unquote, violate FCC regulations whenever they do turn that corner. This is what I'm looking at as a regulatory arm, a kind of gatekeeper sort of system. Like, okay, we don't control what this person does because they use our platform in conjunction with, let's say, C Boogie dances. He developed the C Boogie World. You know what I'm saying? The C Boogie World app is an app that works in conjunction with everything C Boogie related. So he may use YouTube, but everything is all about the C Boogie World app. So he's just associated with YouTube, but he really just has his own C Boogie related stuff everywhere.
Right, he's partner.
Yeah. I mean, he's a partner rather than a person who is actually, you know, a direct partner to where they can try to regulate. So that's it.
Hey, Triple X, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on, G?
Hey, what's going on, fellas? Peace to the chat. Peace to the chat.
What's going on, man?
Hey, yeah. Nice open discussion you guys got going. Thought I would jump in and give my take on it. I guess to echo the sentiments of a lot of things what MOT and Ulysses was saying, I definitely feel this is really about a money move for YouTube, you know, and this is really about money. I feel like a lot of the getting rid of the Google Hangout app, retiring that, and I'm sure they're working on something that's going to be an integrated replacement that can be used, but there will be a charge because they realize the amount of bandwidth that's being used and people are starting to profit off of it in a major way for a lot of users. So they have figured out a way to charge people per month to gain monetary, to monetize this particular platform for live streaming. So I'm not surprised at all that is going this way. Not at all.
Hey, Lil Cass, what's going on, bro?
Hey, what's going on? How you guys doing tonight?
Oh, we chilling, man. We chilling, man. We just talking about the death of Hangouts, August 1st. You have anything to add to that? Okay.
Is Triple still speaking?
No, he's done. Jump right in.
Go ahead, Low Cash. You can jump in, man. I'll follow up a little later.
Cool. What I'm familiar with, I'm aware that it's supposed to be part of the it's supposed to they're supposed to be moving Meet or the Meet chat. Basically, it's Hangouts. It's the updated version of Hangouts. That's all it is. It's supposed to be moving into the G Suite, from what I understand. Mm-hmm. Now, when it comes down to what's going on with YouTube, I'm still in the dark on it. And I heard somebody was saying about going to like paying for broadcasting. Anybody?
Yeah, I was one that said that.
Okay, now is that true?
That's my understanding, because YouTube TV is separate from regular YouTube. They already made a considerable profit off of that, so they know that it works. However, what's going to happen to the social media side of YouTube? They don't want anybody to just leech off of their infrastructure just so they can upload more reptilian videos and content, right? So content that's not sustainable will have to start being questioned. And those who invested into their content will be the ones who can survive, and those who did not, who are uploading questionable content will eventually be purged off unless they pay up payola, so to speak, to actually have their content uploaded. Because before Hangouts, YouTube, you can only upload a 10-minute video. 10 minutes and 59 seconds was the longest you could upload a video for. Yeah, and then it slowly started moving up to like 15 minutes, 20 minutes. But I think they may move back to that model where they say, hey, if you want to use our platform, you can only upload a 20-minute video, or you can only do a live stream for 30 minutes. Anything longer than 30 minutes, you're going to have to pay up.
Yeah. I have a question.
Okay.
You think we could possibly do, okay, you got to have this many followers, and as the amount of followers that you get, the amount you have to pay goes down. So, like, everybody has to, quote-unquote, start over with their viewership. And you have to pay an exorbitant amount of money to have Hangouts. And the more followers that you get, then the cost can go down. I think that would be a perfect way of limiting or even destroying people's ability to come out here and just post nonsense by doing that.
Actually, I don't think that's a good idea at all, MOT. First of all, YouTube makes a lot of money off of commercials. I've happened to notice that there's commercials on pretty much everybody's channel right now. Maybe you don't know it or not. So, I happen to notice there's a lot of commercials floating around now on people's channels. I haven't seen one yet for the Black Brain Trust, but because we're not
monetizing the Black Brain Trust. That's the difference. Everybody else who's monetizing their channels is pushing ads to the subscribers and the viewers. We made a hard line choice that not to do something like that. We don't want that happening.
But the reason why I'm saying it is because I wouldn't be surprised if they slipped in a commercial or two on people and didn't even know it. I wouldn't be surprised. But that's the only reason why I was bringing it up. First of all, they're making enough money off of people anyway. I don't see the reason why you would want to turn back around and charge people more. But I do believe that it's a nice way of but I do believe that's a nice way of filtering out, as you say, the reptiles. But I will say this here, especially to the brothers, man. And I've said this quite a few times to other people. I just haven't said it so openly. It's time to change the format, period. And that's one thing about us. We'll work something. We'll work a dead horse until even after it's dead. We'll still ride it. And the thing about it is, dude, I mean, at this point, you know what people are here for. Give them what they really deserve. Show them, bring some more, buy some cameras, produce some shows, not just a sit down talk show, but because that's really what you see out here most of the time in our area, talk shows, But start bringing some new content to the game, because when you go look at what everybody else is producing, they're producing demonstrations, videos, I guess you say content. They're producing real content, as far as I'm concerned. They're not sit downs just talking and throwing jokes.
Well, I was gonna say content, right? What people are considering quote unquote a content, that's very subjective.
Well,
right?
For example, I know, but I'm trying to find the best words to use. For example, if you ever watch, I like to watch the king of content. I mean, that's like watching Mr. Wizard. It's pretty cool. I mean, you're watching them do experiments, work on some things, stuff like that. If you're gonna tell, for example, you got guys that want to talk about girls and being players, right? Right? We'll go out on a date. Do some videos on some dates of being a player. You see what I'm saying? as opposed to just talking about it.
So you're
And I'm
talking
not
about
saying
reality TV.
more so because it's, you know, pretty much that's exactly what I'm saying. You know, it's time to step the game up. You know, elevate your game a little bit. But most of us are not doing that.
Well, I mean, but you know, that's the interesting thing about all this, right? Because I think a lot of people kind of fell into it because it was an outlet, right? More so like okay, like I would say like 65 to 70% of the dudes who talk about red pill stuff, right? Okay. There was no intention of them, they weren't sitting around, you know, maybe like 7-8 years ago, like, and we're talking about people who may have just started doing it within the past year or two, but like 7-8 years ago, they weren't sitting around like, man, you know, I got this idea to broadcast myself talking about that. I do not believe that was the case for a lot of people. I think a lot of people get inspired by the content that they consume, and then they get inspired to then start to speak on it, right, and make videos about it. It was never like a conscious thing where they were gonna. It was a serious thing where they sat down, they conceptualized, you know, like you said, like taking it serious to the point where, like, okay, so for example, like how you have like your you have like this graphic whatchamacallit, you know, and it has
exactly what it is, a graphic.
Yeah,
continue.
Yeah. I don't know. That's what.
Yes, graphics,
okay, yeah, that's the new name for it. Graphics, what you will call it. But what I'm saying is that like they were more or less inspired to give their take on things that they consume, and it wasn't like a serious stab at being like a media personality. Like now, for example, there's people who talk about like. So so like there'll be a hangout, right? And then somebody, and let's say there was like a dispute about something, and then somebody will make a video talking about a historical reference, right? And they'll just do a screen share and they'll bring something up, and then that's that. But then I follow dudes like, I don't know if anybody has ever checked this dude out. He's called the History Guy, okay? And what he does is, he'll take like some of the most obscure moments in history, and he'll do like a 5 to 15 minute piece, and it's like it's well thought out. He actually writes it all out, and then he presents it in a way like where there's a shtick. He wears a bow tie. He has his hat collection, all these military hats and all this type of stuff in the background. It's like a thing that he does, right? So I like to distinguish between people who, and that in my view is content creation versus someone who doesn't upload, which is what they used to call it back in the day.
Okay. But that's exactly what I'm saying. But what we're doing, this is like a talk show. You know, it's a panel discussion. That's what we're having. And then, you know, and with us, like I said, most of the time with us, you know, we follow behind the examples that are given to us, provided by us using our own social circles. But overall, what I'm saying is that it's just time to evolve. You know, I mean, it's only so much. You know, it's only so much. This is why a lot of people, you know, you may get like 50,000 subscribers. But for example, look at Phil. You know, I mean, that's a pretty good concept. You know, it's low, but it's not expensive. You know, but it's still quality content.
Yeah, but see, Phil's in it for the profit aspect. So what happens to the guys who are not, or the people, the content creators who are not specifically in it for profit? Those people.
But what I'm saying is that I still don't think. What I'm saying overall is that I don't still see the point of. I just disagree with charging. You know, for those to upload content to YouTube.
You might disagree with that,
but I am saying that, you know, at some point, if you are serious about it, continue.
No, I'm saying I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm just saying you may disagree with it, but the Alphabet Group, which owns YouTube, is looking at this and saying we have to turn more revenue because Facebook is all over the place. You know, they're dominant. And right now they're battling over Africa. I just saw an article that's going to go on the docket probably next week. They're battling for Africa right now. Facebook versus Google. They're laying down all types of fiber to get more Africans online so they can get that subscriber base. So they're looking at this from a not just a high level, but from a very deep dive and saying we have to monetize all of these people. somehow, some way. We have to get them
And,
online.
you know, no, it's no different than when AT&T ran phone lines. It's no different. It's no different. They're, when the car companies bought the railroads and shut them down so everybody could buy cars. It's no different. And if you're the first person over there to bring customers to your actual product, you win. So, yeah.
What's going on, Anti-Gravity?
Hey, peace, guys. How are you guys doing?
Sure, bro.
Good.
Peace.
I think there's
I'm sorry, go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that I just want to add also this point. YouTube is trying to kind of get the scale, that keep the scale that they're at the moment and grow, but with as little humans, employees as they can. So their algorithm is not perfect, right? It's just if it sees a particular word or groups of words in a title or in a description or something, they'll slap it down. So that's another thing you have to keep in mind. It's kind of been like a war between the content creators and the algorithm in terms of trying to make sure that they don't get demonetized. So I just wanted to throw that in. What do you guys think is going to be the impact of the algorithm on kind of what they're doing at the moment? Because they had the huge controversy with Vox, and they're trying to toe the line. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, they said that with was it Louder with Crowder? You're going to see a lot of people trying to find alternatives from the YouTube, from like Facebook, IG. That's why a lot of the Google and YouTube, they're becoming your modern day conglomerates. Let's call it what it is, conglomerates. And those alternative websites like what was it, Gab Talk, Alt-Light, Black Space, you name it, those alternative social media places, they're coming, but they're trying to squash that competition, because if they get their subscribers, their viewers, then that means that's a loss for YouTube, that's a loss for Google. And if Facebook, or I know Amazon is trying to do that too. So, the race to Africa, we already know it's going to happen. I was looking up, was it African channel, not Dr. Mumbi, it's another one, I can't even say it right, Tucheniki or Tuchen, something with an N, and they're basically talking about how some of the Western African countries are going to combine their money together and use one currency to get off the CFA that France made. So be on the lookout. Africa really is not playing. Tanzania and other couple of African countries are talking about kicking out. Like, they're going to deal with the Chinese, but they don't want the Chinese there. So it's going to be a lot of rift. You're going to see a lot of shift in the African continent. Because, like, I've seen a lot of Africans sharing information, like the ones in BGS, your stuff, Dr. Mumbi, Phil the Advisor, a whole host of others. So, as the world is becoming smaller and smaller, so is white supremacy. So is just any supremacy, I would say, because, the next thing is going to be space expansion and how you're going to deal with other places if you can't even deal with home. So that's how I see it.
Okay. Flex.
To speak to what she's saying, is that we do need to create this is what I do appreciate about the Black Brain Trust, is that we should start thinking about, better yet, not just how to produce content. Some people are really good at it. I don't mind helping people with it, but we do have to start creating our own communication lines, form of communication.
Right.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that if we're not going to get any land reclamation, in terms of reparations, you're going to have to start thinking about carving out digital real estate for yourself in cyberspace. So
That's basically it too.
And
yeah,
this is why I was proposing at least have your own personal server, our own dedicated server to something.
or that's that's not 100% of what I'm focusing on. I'm saying there has to be a presence where ADOS people are supposedly, who claim to be ADOS, hashtagging themselves. They have to be able to create a social space for themselves, and without relying on other people's platforms, because YouTube is just a platform, right? Facebook is just a platform. Well, Facebook is moving into the same direction that AWS is, Amazon Web Services, and Google Cloud Platform, becoming more of a infrastructure as a service now too, because they have so much money and so much hardware that's underutilized that they need to spend it some way. So Facebook will eventually start moving in the same direction as AWS.
Yeah.
Well, given that Facebook and YouTube, they've functionally, and Google, they've functionally become monopolies. There's no real alternatives, right? I would say the only real alternatives would be Baidu, and that's only because the Chinese government banned everyone else from participating. So, for Africa, what would you guys envision? Like a banning of Google and Facebook, in favor of domestic, search engines, and
they actually just had
other
that.
Apps.
They actually just had that discussion at the I think it was at Davos, the World Economic Forum. I think they were just talking about that Africa has to start owning its own data centers and cloud infrastructure for themselves, and stop relying on Western powers to host their content, because they have no idea where their data is going, and the monetization of social media is becoming a problem, because Africa has 1.2 or 1.3 billion people right now, and if you monetize all those people, that's a lot of profit for those those Silicon Valley companies. But what happens to Africa? They're not actually getting any sort of revenue out of that. So what they're talking about doing is actually creating their own platform and stop relying on Western powers as a response to the monetization of social media. Now, what's going to happen, or what I think I envision what's going to happen with these discussions, is that they will have to create their own social media platform, and start hosting all of their own their technologies onshore, which is going to drive a lot of growth in terms of human capital and human resources. Where does ADOS fit in all this? I don't know. Should ADOS rely on the continent and help it grow in terms of development? That could be an opportunity for them. But ADOS has to ask themselves, where do they stand? Where do they stand in the fourth industrial revolution? As it's happening in front of them.
I will say this, and it may, you already know how this can strike some people, but they're gonna when you say where do they stand, right where they're at, right? And from what's been said by and you guys hear the chatter that's going on various channels and all of that. Some people feel as though they can't make a move until reparations have been until that issue's been taken care of. Can't do anything else, right? So they're going to stand right where they're at.
I think I disagree, but I think I've seen, like I said, I've seen a lot of young people, young ADOS, not young black children, descendant of immigrants like myself. I've seen a lot of ADOS children taking the stand of using it and utilizing it to their own profit.
Well, no, we're literally talking about.
Literally
like top down. We're talking about okay, you have to. There's a bit of sweat equity that would be involved, right, in creating something like this. You see, so in lieu of just not having just all of the capital that would be required to just pay for it, quote unquote, okay, there would be work that would have to actually be put in to pull something like this off. And it's going to take a very sizable commitment. When Mike is just saying, okay, you need to have like all of your stuff onshore, right? And it's going to, so that means you're going to have to actually have engineers. You're going to have all these people on the ground. Okay. And if we're somehow to leverage this too, then guess what? We're going to have to actually buy into it and buy in vis-a-vis sweat equity. This would have to be something that is looked upon as being, a crucial to us being able to have more of a global voice, right? And not really be subjected to, whatever content policies that happen to change because, YouTube says, okay, look, this, no longer are we going to be doing this, or, Facebook says we're going to be doing that, or these can't be discussed, or whatever the case may be. And when I said what I said, that wasn't a swipe at just like ADOS in general. That wasn't what that was. I targeted that comment. That's specific. So those who share that view, that's who I'm talking to.
Oh, I see. So you're saying, they're not going to not to say they're not going to do something, but they're not going to do a major move until they get.
Well, they don't feel as though major moves can be made. They don't really feel as though like things can be created and done right without because there's this specter of WS that still lingers over our heads and stuff like that. Okay.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, I mean, because I'm more of a Marcus Garvey kind of person. What would I say for that kind of situation? You kind of have to be like a Benedict Arnold in that way, where you gotta put. I mean.
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Tyler. Go ahead.
I mean, not in the sense that you're not against your own interest, but you gotta I don't know. It's like you gotta you're walking on tightrope, and I see where the tightrope is, and I was like, yo, this is hard, but I don't put it. I listen. If ADOS could do it, there's one group of people I give much respect for is ADOS. Out of all the Black diaspora, I mean, I've seen a lot of the Black diaspora fight for what their rights are, but ADOS, y'all take the cake. I think there is a possible way. I think there are people in the ADOS community that can solve that issue when it comes to the mainstream and the policies that have been implemented while dealing with reparations. But y'all would probably have to do like a meetup area, not online, but like somewhere else.
We have to incentivize, not we, but I'm saying the platform itself. If you're going to build it, you have to incentivize it so that the users, the subscribers, the participants of that platform benefit just as much. I think what's happening with YouTube, in the same way that YouTube paid profit to people through super chats and so on and ad revenue, you would have to do the same thing. So that means you're going to need advertisers to participate in that platform as well.
Right. So I'm sorry, Mike. I forgot about you.
Yeah, you can't just build a platform and then say everybody come over here, but there's no real incentives for them to come over there.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like it has to put a lot of brain power and creativity. Like meet and greets, meeting up with people across the country, meeting up with other ADOS. What's the issue in the community? There's gonna have to be a lot of meet and greets, and it can't just be online. It's gonna have to be offline, like what you guys do on a daily basis.
I think it's not just. Oh, go ahead. Who was speaking?
No, you go ahead.
Yeah, it's not even just the ads and making the incentives. What's even more important is having the infrastructure, in the back end. Like for example, Gab was supposedly an alternative to YouTube, right? And a lot of free speech, yada yada. But once MasterCard and Visa took away their payment processing, you know, they're done basically.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
if you want to have a true alternative, you know, it has to be outside of the current structure, right? That, you know, is going to, because it's not even so much that, you know, they're against, you know, black people or anything like that. They just want the most amount of, you know, revenue and money as they can get. So
Basically,
whoever they have to appease, yeah, whoever
green.
they have to appease or, you know, align with, they'll do it to get the, you know, the most amount of money possible. You know
Yeah,
what I mean?
and look, if the whole thing is this, if you're a for-profit company, right? Last I checked, YouTube is an LLC, which means they have shareholders, and your number one fiduciary responsibility is to turn a profit. Okay, that's what you're supposed to do as a for-profit business. Okay, that's like you're constitutionally bound as such. Okay, so like let's kind of like take, like I said, like we sometimes we will attribute WS to things that where it's not applicable, right? You have to really look at this with a true amoral pragmatist viewpoint. Okay, it's like this is a for-profit business. You have to do what's good for business. Now, in terms of an alternative, I mean, there's blockchain based alternatives like DTube. If one wanted to explore that, could. You know, but the fact of the matter is that, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. There's already examples that one could visually look at and say, okay, look, I want to take the best from this, the best from this, the best from this, and here's how we want to do it that'll best benefit us. It really just it's all in the conceptualizing, right? It's in creating a solution that's going to solve or actually, you know, fill in the gaps, right? That you may feel like, okay, this platform is good here, but it's lacking here, and this one's good here, but it's lacking here. So it's all about the conceptualizing of it, and then there has to just be, you know, an actual push to create it. And we're talking about a tech solution, right? This isn't this isn't a I'm trying to think what to call it. I mean, we're talking about creating a tech product here. That's really, you know, so we have to frame how we would approach something like this from a tech standpoint.
And operate like a tech startup.
Thank you.
So I only want to spend 5 more minutes on this, and then we'll switch gears and go to something else. But yeah, from a tech startup perspective, that means it would require you know, a considerable amount of sweat equity into this, as Complex was mentioning earlier. That you're talking about writing lots and lots of lines of code, but it also has to be business modeled, which is something that we do on this platform all the time. We always do a lot of business modeling, but and Lowcast and myself has spoken about this a couple weeks ago. I think last time I was on his platform. How to, you know, basically creating a black WeChat, a black version of WeChat, where you can pay your utilities, you can hail down a ride sharing vehicle, you can order food with it, and you can and it's your social media platform as well, and you can book Airbnb, you know, all over the world and things like that. It has to be a total platform that is that incentivizes a lot of ADOS to actually join it. Any closing thoughts on this before we move on to another topic?
Can I just put an optimistic view, even though it can be cynical? I know it's cynical sometimes, but I rather see the glass half full than half empty. I think there's possibility. There is possibility. It's just going to be a lot of, like you said, sweat equity, but it is a lot of possibility. I mean, you know, ADOS does have first world technology at their fingertips. Most of the inventions that were contribute to this country was because of ADOS and the sacrifice ADOS has made to this country millions and millions of times. So, you know, out of anybody, ADOS can do it. I know I put a lot of faith in y'all, but, you know, respect.
I think a lot. I think a lot.
Oh, go ahead, Lucas. No, go ahead.
Oh no, the thing is back to what Ulysses was saying. The bottom line is, dude, we're used to the environment that we're in. Period. We're comfortable with the environment we have, and even if you did give us money. A large amount of us would just use that for spending. It wouldn't be in investing towards making more money or anything like that. But that's all I have to say.
Yeah, unfortunately, I would agree with a lot what Low Cash just said. Probably, definitely more than half would unfortunately use their money for spending. I do think a lot of positivity will come from it, but unfortunately, probably the bulk would probably end up squandering the money, and a couple generations down, it'd just be gone.
Yeah, I think personally, dude, it wouldn't last long, unfortunately.
Yeah, the bulk of it will be blown. I see some newer black businesses, tech startups and stuff jumping off of it, and that would be great. But the bulk of people will probably just end up blowing it, man. Unfortunately.
Anti-gravity. I'm sorry, man.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was gonna say, there's all the tech stuff that we were talking about, like cryptocurrency, blockchain, but there also has to be the other infrastructure, like the financial infrastructure of like physical or even online banks, but based out of African countries, right? So that you're not well, you'll be part of the SWIFT system, at least for the time being, but who knows how much longer that'll be. So if there'll be alternatives, if you have banks set up, you can switch over to the new system, and you're not as beholden to the current SWIFT system. So and starting a bank, is not as much as people would think. It's about, I think, $5 to $10 million, and in the U.S., if you want to start a credit union, that's like 900,000, right?
Yeah.
It seems like a lot of money, but there's more than that amount of money in Black America. So the capacity is there.
Hey, Mark, you want to switch gears?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's up to you guys. What do you have?
Okay, so I know I was on was it? I think it was on MSNBC or CNN. They were talking about how Trump went to the DMZ border and met with Kim Jong-un. I think it was a setup because just a while ago.
Wait, though. We this isn't geopolitics tonight. We're gonna
sorry.
we're gonna.
I'm sorry. Okay, so what could I say? I guess the black.
Oh, I'm sorry, Tyler. Go ahead. There was a couple of comments I did want to read, but go ahead. I'll go after you finish.
Oh no. I'll come back to that thought later. I have to have my mind together with this thought. Takes a while for me.
Okay. Let's see here. DE said just need about 20% of the money going into business and venture capital to see a big improvement in the Black community. I would, well, 20%. Yeah, I would love to see a whole lot more if that were to happen, but And then Dasbrell, sustainability equals the triple bottom line: 1 part capitalism, 1 part socialism, 1 part conservationalism. I agree.
What do you guys think about? Well, I won't go into that right now, but HR 40. What's your take on HR 40 for right now? Do you think that there's a possibility of looking into this? How would they look at it? What would how does reparations look like? To you guys.
I think right now it's just we're going to still argue for about another year.
Okay.
We're going to argue for another year.
When you say argue, are you talking about like the people on YouTube arguing about what they're arguing about?
I'm talking about the social media influencers. Yeah.
Oh.
They're going to argue for a little while longer. The bottom line is you already see how it's going to go down. I mean, everybody's really speaking against it, and they're basically trying to put you back into the circle of, you need better education. You need assistance everywhere else except for cutting, as opposed to giving money. And I'm funny about the money itself, but my whole thing is look, break us off what we need so we can do some stuff with it.
I have a quick question for you guys.
Yeah.
So HR 40 is from what I understand, uh, it's a bill to go and research and discuss the idea of reparations, right? Or how
Yep.
it's going
Yeah,
to work.
that's all it is.
Correct.
So isn't it possible? I don't know how expensive it would be. Maybe I don't know,
I think they're spending
maybe $10
$14
million,
million just for this shit. For what they're talking
15.
about right
Okay,
now. I think it's
all
14.
right. So 10 to 15 million, let's just say, to I don't know, look through all of the university basements for the records of the different people, and to kind of do the genealogy and the research and track back people to
Oh
They don't
yeah,
need to
particular
do all. First of all, they don't
plantations
need to
or
do all that.
et
That's a
cetera, et cetera.
farce. That's a farce.
No,
They
no, I'm
don't need
just
to do
saying,
that.
for example, to do all of that,
they don't need
if
to do
people
that.
just, if people, okay, I just got
Well, let them. No, let them. Let
Go
No,
ahead,
go ahead.
anti-gravity. I'm sorry. I wasn't trying to shoot you down.
No. It's all good. The point I was trying to make is, it'll cost 10 to 15 million just to look into people's the genealogy and et cetera, right? So couldn't it be financed? Let's say just say by an independent group to do this research on its own. So then let's say that shows, oh, okay, all these people are officially a part of ADOS because they can track their history to such and such person.
Well,
Wouldn't that bypass HR 40 completely?
I think
well,
it's insulting to even have HR 40 as a bill when they already built a slave museum in Washington D.C. I mean, what exactly are they denying?
well, that
You've already agreed and have all the artifacts and all the records in that museum. What more do you need? What for a feasibility study?
Here's the real truth behind it. They want. Its bottom line is the truth matter is you're looking at. They know the truth. Truth be told, reparations is around about the real cost of it is around about over $30,000,
they said
$30
it's
trillion.
yeah,
It's over
around
30
the
trillion.
trillions. It's in the trillions,
And the
bro.
thing about it is that they're trying to figure out a way to minimize how much it is. That's why they're throwing out low numbers like $1 billion, and they're really, really sticking their finger to the wind to see what they're really listening to hear what kind of noise is being made. You see what I'm saying? And the bottom line is they're trying to play us for stupid.
Mm-hmm.
That's the whole thing. And the people who you're looking at, it's funny because if you've watched 20 minutes of the hearing, Jason Black did a great job on it, line by line. If you listen, everybody basically, when it came down to the number one thing you needed, which was the money, which is resource, they know that. Everybody was against it. But we need to finance what are you talking about financing the black colleges? Most black colleges, historic black colleges, are not even owned by black people. Are not even controlled by black people. Come on, man. Think about it.
Well, the thing about it is this, and this is the reason why
keep in our hands and still make them feel like they got something.
Well, I mean, this is the reason why you really have to. People get so caught up in a lot of this stuff, and they're not really thinking rationally about it. Okay, the first thing, what Mike said was obvious, right? Okay, what discussion is there to really be had, or why does it have to have why do you have to have a bill just to explore the notion when you have a goddamn slave museum? That's the first thing, right? So what does HR 40 actually represent? It actually, well, hold on, dude. It actually represents a way of coalescing the black vote in the upcoming elections. That's the reason why the bill isn't anything. There's no meat or potatoes to it. It's just a discussion to be had. Now let's move on to the next part. I've heard the figure at $17 trillion. Where does the United States get $17 trillion from?
They spend more than that on every damn thing else.
Well, they owe. I mean, the debt clock is at 22 trillion right now. So when you really think about it, if they're not going to pay their own debts, I don't think they're going to pay the debts.
Are you going to just put 17 on top of the 22, and now we're at what, 39?
Yeah, basically. Well, my thing is, what you guys were talking about on Saturday night chat. They need to cut off foreign aid and reinvest into their infrastructure and the least of their own, which would happily be ADOS and other groups like the Native Americans. They're talking about that. I heard a court case with the $5 Indian and how a lot of the I think it was the Cherokee Nation that was having like a real gripe on it. some of the like I know the Seminoles have to like really, if you say you're Seminole, you gotta prove you're a Seminole. So it is going to be, I think for once, America needs to cut off foreign aid. It needs to stop investing in changing regimes like they've been doing. Like now they're trying
Why
to
cutting
do
off
this
foreign
with,
aid, though, if you don't mind explaining that? Because
well,
foreign aid is like 1% of the U.S. budget.
well, not just besides the U.S. budget, but also another like, what's it, DARPA? I was listening to Joe Rogan podcast with this lady about the CIA and how the military complex, which really is like the scientific area, the money making area of the military complex, is investing billions and billions of dollars on high tech weapons for whatever reason, when that kind of weapon, though, that kind of money and technology can be invested in like building your roads, your schools, having better public transportation. Oh,
That's the
instead of
military
That's
budget, though.
yeah,
what,
but
what,
that's different. That's more what drives capitalism, right? Capitalism is driven by competition as well. So if you're not competing, you'll end up like the Russians, where they don't invent anything. I mean, for the most part, Russia or the Soviet Union at the time had so much difficulty competing with the West because they didn't invent anything. They pretty much communism pretty much stripped them of any sort of inventive capital. That they pretty much ran out of money real fast because they couldn't grow. But to your point, the aid that goes to these other countries, like Intergravity was saying, it's usually like 1 to 2%. But I think you're just talking about the principle of sending money to another country, but then denying, ADOS any sort of reparations or any sort of funding at all.
yeah.
Well, now I would throw this out there for consideration. So, and I don't know like how true this is or what, like if it's, or how accurate it is, right? But they say black spending power, right, in the United States is something to the tune of what, in the couple trillion, or like not a couple trillion, but like they say like in the billions or something, trillions, or what is it?
It's almost trillions. It's almost trillions.
Okay,
But
let's say it's almost trillion, right? Okay, so let's take that number for just a second. So, and I'm gonna throw this question out there, man. Anybody can feel free to kind of give their take on it. Of that spending power, how much of that goes into institutions, banks, businesses, services, everything that does not directly circulate that capital back to you, or is concentrated in institutions created by you, versus anyone else who isn't black? How much of their capital do they put into black institutions, black businesses, and black services?
that's true. I was listening to Erica Classy Climb about that too, and E. Dean Cole. Solutions for the trillions that black Americans have spent, they could easily, with the trillions, but it's mostly women that controls that kind of money, because you do have men, but women who have children or have families spend a lot of money on things, I believe, that are not necessary for the community. I prefer finding a we buy, like, what's that website, webuyBlack.com, where you look for quality business people who are about integrity and rebuilding the community in that sense. But you don't see it too much in the black community. Should there be an incentive for black business for ADOS? ADOS get tax-free black business. I think I was also thinking that that sense that ADOS should not be taxed, and if they do have debt, that debt would be forgiven.
Well, I don't want to get away from the concept here of redirecting the flow of capital, right? Because again, what we're doing is we're saying, okay, well, let's look at what our estimated spending power is, and it's estimated to be at $1 trillion or on or abouts, right?
Yeah.
So, and that's per capita. Wait, say that again, Locas.
I think it's about. I want to say about 2 trillion, but I think it may be like 1.2 trillion.
Okay. All
Damn,
right.
that's
So
a lot.
that's a lot of money, right?
Wait. I got a question for you because I know how
It
we are.
is 2 trillion.
I know. It's 2 trillion. Okay, great. I know how we like to think about things, but how is it being calculated? Because we're not the ones who are calculating these numbers.
Well, this is the reason why I was saying I don't
So when
really
you say
know.
spending power, what are we referring to?
Well, the money that is available to us to inject into, well, one, money that's available to us available for us to inject into the economy, and then
light bill? Is that is that part of your light bill? Part of your mortgage? Is that also part of your spend? It's part of your I'm asking, is that really? In other words, we might be under the impression, clear it up, that we thinking that it's like shopping money, so to speak, when it's actually living money.
Any money that leaves the black community's hands is basically spending power.
This is right,
which is all of it.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, they calculated most of it is wages, because most Americans don't have savings. They don't have anything invested. Yeah, it's wages.
Okay, so
most
we all
of it
pay
is
bills,
wages.
so a large portion of that money is going to expenditures.
Yeah, well, in most cases, more than people even have in liquid assets. A lot of it is money even spent from credit cards, lines of credit, et cetera, et cetera. All those are spending power. Yeah.
So it's safe to say that we might be envisioning spending power as us having money to buy sneakers, shoes, or whatever, luxury items, when we really don't have it. So that's it's safe to say that. Is it safe to say that's mainly our money that we use to for living?
No, that's not. I'm not talking about that. I'm saying the key encompassing.
So
that's what I'm saying.
We don't really have 1.2 trillion the way we like to envision it spending power. Then.
Well, I mean,
it's not like 1 trillion in like a hedge fund or something like that.
Right. No, not like that. But if you're talking about access to credit, right? So because credit spending would be okay. So that means that, let's say I don't have, I only have like maybe $200 in the bank, but I got $10,000 on a credit card. Okay, that's $10,000 in capital that I have available for me to spend. Now, I could spend that with a black business, right? Which that money moves from the credit markets right into their bank account, and then if that bank account is held at a black bank, right, then the banks can issue loans to homes in black communities to black people off of the deposits in the bank. See, so what I'm saying here is that when we look at the money that's being spent and who's spending it, where is it being spent? And then the other question, who's spending money with us?
That's another question too.
Right. But see, but I mean, and so look, I would say that you could in the time that it would take to negotiate some sort of reparations package, because we haven't seen it yet, even though reparations has been something of an elephant, right, sitting in the corner of the room, a big pink one, right, that seemingly we kind of know as Americans there's a group of people that really have not been made whole by this. But if those same people, and some would make the argument that affirmative action was that, but that's neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, though, is that if we do have spending power, and I'm throwing that in air quotes, right? If we do have that, then wouldn't it behoove us to then maybe redirect it in a way that be beneficial to us?
I would say so too. Yeah, I agree.
Mississippian, proud Mississippian said the ADOS has 2.6% of the spending wealth, and Nielsen was just throwing that kind of number so that they can do the marketing tailored to ADOS. So I believe that too. I believe that too. I mean, like I said, it's a tricky slope. I'm glad that ADOS is putting the foot up and the foot on their neck on the Democrats. I think they need to do that I think they should do that for, every time they're begging for a vote. I heard on the advice show that he was saying, like, they're gonna, like, if ADOS sits this one out, which I'm more likely they're gonna do. I think Trump is gonna win. Like, regardless if ADOS sits this out or not, I think the clear. I don't know. Maybe.
Talia, don't you think that that would be the reason why you would be pushing to get a whole group of people who have largely fallen off of the Democratic voter rolls, right, since the 2016 election. They said there's been a relatively large exodus of black men who have just basically walked away from the Democratic Party. And they're kind of just left with the sister girl contingent for the most part. And even a lot of sisters are starting to reassess their love affair with the Democratic Party. So tossing this bill to discuss the idea of it, right, would lend the Democrats, would lend that to for black folks to think that there's this group of people that's actually serious about this. Now let's just analyze this, just the optics, right? You have two quote unquote black candidates, right? Kamala Harris, Cory Booker. When you press them about reparations, well, Kamala said just outright no. Booker was like, you skittish. Maybe that's something to think about. I don't know. We'll see, right? But you take the couple of the white candidates, and they're like, yeah, totally. See, so what does that tell you? That tells you that the Democrats really ain't serious about it. Look, if the Democratic Party was really serious about it, the two black candidates would be pushing it. Think about it.
The Democratic Party is extremely fractured right now. They're fractured by progressives versus the non-progressive.
They're calling the progressive. Mike's sitting right ahead. You have a big fracture. You have the progressive side of the party that's running very heavy. That's pushing against what they call the Democratic corporatists. Yeah. Which they almost consider almost quasi kind of like Republicans in some ways.
Well, yeah, that'd be like your AOCs versus your Bidens.
So you've definitely got a schism in the party. And that's kind of what's going on right now, which I think is kind of good. You're gonna have to clean some of the crap out, but you do have, your Clinton corporatists, and then you have your Bernie and them, they're the more progressive side of the wing of the party. And I think if the party is going to really establish itself and do anything successfully on this one round, it's going to have to take more of the progressive road. I think that's what people are kind of looking for. I don't know if they were going to be looking for the straight down the road, the middle of the road kind of person and hang loose a little bit. That's why I think this reparations piece is key, and why we got to be in there pushing this thing as fast and as hard as we can right now, because I think the momentum is here for it.
No, I have now Jim Denton in the chat. He does have a question here, and I think this is a really good one because I think this dude was actually frozen out a lot in the discussion during these debates, and that's Andrew Yang. And he says, "Do you think Andrew Yang has a chance to win?" Now, Andrew Yang, his platform is basically the centerpiece. His platform is a UBI. Okay, and for those who don't know, one of the key components to how a UBI would actually how you would actually get the money to pay for a UBI, which I think they said would be like $1,000 a month for everyone. Okay, the way you would do it is that on jobs that are basically, they would place a robot tax on companies that have basically moved to automation. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Well, I heard about that UBI. Go ahead. Oh, okay. The UBI, I heard it on the Joe Rogan podcast when he was on the Joe Rogan. Would I think there'll be a downside? Yes, I think it would be a downside if we just see more things get automated. Do I think can we incorporate some skills even when like the fourth industrial wave is coming? I think so, but I think a lot of people who are not prepared are going to lean towards the UBI. They're doing it in Finland and I think Sweden too. You're going to see it. There's going to be less incentive to. I kind of like go back to that movie. What's this Disney movie called? WALL-E? I think you're going to see that more. But we'll see. It's like an upside. It's like what do they call it? Not a devil's advocate. It's like when you got to deal with not two roads. I forgot. It's like an old Greek fable, but I'll find it.
Well, we do. We have certain forms of UBIs that exists now in our society and culture. Medicare, Medicaid. These are forms of UBIs. The bigger UBI, I think that we're going to be looking at, that people are really going to want to push forward to as we start to see even more. So this is really healthcare. I mean, that's something that Obama tried to put through. He didn't want to go for the whole universal healthcare, but that's something that a lot more people are going to be pushing for as things get a little tighter. So the UBI is here. I suspect it's we're going to see it in some different forms. I know we're talking about AI is going to displace a lot of people in the workforce, but usually if you have a fairly trained workforce, people can shift and do some other things as well. So I don't know if this wholesale displacement by AI is going to take place overnight, but as it tends to grow, we're going to see a little more of UBI coming in. Your population is also getting a little bit older, so the boomers and so forth are starting to move into retirement age. So that's another form of the UBI. SSI. So anyway, so I think we'll be able to play this out. Anyway, go ahead, Mike. I'm sorry.
No, sorry. I was just going to say that Alaska already has UBI and have always had UBI.
They always did.
Establishment of the state. I would argue that there was probably UBI in North Dakota as well with the old farmers, and that's why they established their own public bank. Yeah. So we know that there's examples on the ground of how they managed UBI. I believe Puerto Rico has UBI as well, and have had it for quite some time. So the idea that this, whether or not this can work. We read an article the other day on the Hangout where they were talking about a feasibility study on whether or not UBI would work in Massachusetts. And the study is about the historic inequities and structural racism being part of the reason why you would need a UBI in this state, right? So I don't know if it's overall from a country standpoint, but from a state standpoint, that's what they're looking at. So if they're talking about looking at it from that perspective, they're also looking at this from a reparations perspective.
Yeah. No, was the was going to say something.
Actually, I was going to add something to that.
Oh, go ahead, man.
Go right ahead, Dr. Phoenix.
Okay, yeah, 2 points I want to make here. One, in regards to Black men voting, understand something. In the 2016 election, you had about 15% of Black men that voted for Donald Trump and the GOP. Right now, current projections put that at a minimum of 25 to 30% in 2020. So even and you have upwards of 95 to almost 100% of Black women that vote for Democrats. So again, even if the Democrats could get every single voting age Black female to vote for them, they would still lose because they are slated to lose at least a third of the Black male vote in the coming election. So, two, in relation to UBIs and healthcare, I think Nagon is correct. Again, I obviously with my background in healthcare, I don't think we really understand just how expensive healthcare is until you have to experience the system for yourself. And so again, for example, if you end up, you get hurt, you might need to get a few sutures or whatever. You go into an ER, a few sutures you might spend like 3 hours waiting for 10 minutes for the, nurse or the physician to come in and put a few sutures in, and then you get a $2,000 bill in the mail. And so, when you just look at just simple things, getting medications as a whole, runaway costs. I mean, if you did not have CMS, the 90% of people could not afford their medications. Most seniors would just die sick because they couldn't afford healthcare. So again, one of the major area we're seeing is that, and if you look at the numbers, you have anywhere between 20 to 25% of GDP right now is just healthcare alone. So you have to rein in those costs. That's why you see this push now to get more what they would call mid-level providers, physician assistants, nurse practitioners, in place of doctors. Why? Because the biggest drain on healthcare is actually primary care. primary care is the biggest drain on the health system because again, you're dealing with people who have concurrent morbid conditions, comorbid conditions. So again, you're dealing with, again, I see people regularly who are dealing, they have diabetes, they have chronic kidney disease, they might even be in kidney failure, they have congestive heart failure, they might have some venous insufficiencies. So again, I'm seeing them, and I'm having to manage people that are have 5-6 comorbid conditions, and you have to take medications on average. Most of the folks I see got at least 20 meds.
Well, I hate to be interruption. I'm reading a couple comments from Diaspora L and Proud Mississippian. I'll start with Proud Mississippian first. He said, if you properly address the healthcare, you have to address the source of most illness today. The food we're eating is poisonous.
That's not entirely true. That's not it. Part of healthcare is not part of your. Most of your health is your behavior. It's not necessarily what you're eating per se.
Yeah. Another thing.
Correct, doctor.
Okay. So another thing. Diaspora L says, sadly, that seems that the nations have the lowest diversity. Mono-ethnic nations tend to appear more innovative. Yes, in some ways, and no, in certain ways. You have to look at the population, and if you look at these populations that are mono-ethnic, you see the decrease in their
Here's the problem with healthcare. If I'm gonna go tell you all the flat out truth, if most of your pretty much just about any nurse or physician you talk to won't tell you this, the major problem with healthcare as it pertains to Black people, most Black people are broke. That's the major problem.
That's basically it. Yeah.
That's the major problem. We know it. There's tons of research in arenas of public health, social sciences, biomedical sciences. Most of the health problems Black people face are mostly related to socioeconomic reasons. They're not related necessarily to genetics or biology. That's
no,
only
I'm
about
not.
10%.
No.
Let me finish. So again, the major issue we face in healthcare is the fact that most Black people are broke. And if you're broke, you tend to not eat the foods that you should be eating. You tend to go stop at the local Popeyes or McDonald's, and you can go buy a whatever, a 2-piece or a burger or whatever it is you buy, and people will do that regularly. 2, because you do have a lack of economic development in areas where Black people live. So what happens, and what gets replaced is that, going back to what you guys were talking about earlier about the spending power. Part of the spending power is that most Black folks are liquid capital. They just have cash on hand. So you can get folks come in and start up a little corner store. And because we know Black folks just got all this cash sitting around, because a significant portion of Black society does not have bank accounts.
Yep.
So the major problem we're facing really is really a lack of capital. I mean,
it definitely is. It's definitely a capitalization problem.
Dr. Phoenix, it still sounds like you went right back into support of what she was saying before.
And it's hitting a lot of it's hitting people all across the board. I mean, you have a lot of middle class people who are going broke because of one catastrophic illness and so forth. I mean, so our healthcare system is totally screwed up, but it is hitting us hard because we don't have
because the healthcare system. Right, because the healthcare system is designed to be for profit, whereas in other countries, it's the opposite, right? So,
you get it's fee for service. It's a fee for service model. So essentially, everything you do, if the moment I touch you or a physician touches you, you get a bill. It doesn't matter if I just touch you to give you some cough syrup, you get a bill for that.
Yep.
The moment I interact with you, there's a bill being generated for that. You have the oh my God. You have a coding system. The name escapes me.
ICD-9.
Yeah, there you go. Thank you. And so again, there's a code generated for every single thing. I mean, you think of it, there's a code for it.
I used to be a claims examiner, Dr. Phoenix. They will charge like aspirin, 1 tablet, like $2, $3.
But I mean, that's how you get charged, and I think that's what. And to go back to Nagone 11's point is that everything gets charged with within the system. I mean, you get a medication. I mean, you got kids that have allergies that can have anaphylactic reactions to just eating peanuts. You need an EpiPen. You got EpiPens that are cost thousands of dollars, and there's only like a pack of 2.
But wait, Dr. Venus, wasn't there something some time back with that whole EpiPen thing? Because there's one company that had a patent on it.
Yes, that's how most medications work. I mean, well, what happens is,
so Martin Shkreli and his whole crew getting involved.
Kind of like that, but with the EpiPen thing, they made it a real big issue because just what Dr. Venus said, kids need it. It was mainly like for kids, and they would have these. So let's say it was a kid was at school, right, and ate some peanuts or something, and then had an allergy, like an outbreak or something. Like that's where that EpiPen would come in. But when the price of it went from like $40 to $400 or something, there was like outrage over that.
Yeah, I mean, it was because you couldn't afford it. You couldn't afford it. You couldn't afford to get a shot.
I mean, if you, for example, you get some of the biggest areas of research in healthcare, cardiovascular disease and cancer. You ask the average cancer patient how much they had to spend for just to get those treatments.
Thousands of dollars.
I was talking about the other night. I was talking about hyperbaric medicine. Hyperbaric medicine. If you're a cancer patient and you have radiation damage, and you have to go see a specialist who specializes in hyperbaric medicine, those treatments, and I personally work with one and I do research with one. Those treatments, he charges $200 per session, and people have to go there 3 times a week, 5 times a week. And so you imagine if you got not 300 patients that are all going there, you're making hundreds of thousands, millions of dollars in a month. You mean $200 per second? So if you go there 5 days a week, that's 200. That's 200 times 5. That's $1,000, and then you have to spread that out over a 12-week period. If you're a cancer patient, you're looking at at least an 8-month period.
I would like to say something. Andy was saying we underestimate grocery stores that are available to Black communities versus other communities' lack of quality is what Black communities are affected with all kinds of man-made diseases. What's your take on that about grocery stores? And another comment. I was just talking about the UBI and diaspora. L was talking about. Sadly, it seems that the nation states that have the lowest diversity monoethnic nations tend to appear more innovative and progressive. And basically about awesome. Well, that's what I'm saying, because that's not true, because the policies. Remember, EU is basically a colonized collective that their overlords have already deemed, and now people want to break apart. Now people want to find out what the hell is EU about. They too are suffering if you don't see what's going on in the EU. So they don't have that. They don't have that much better policies, because you look at what's going on with the China, with the harvest organizing of prisoners, forced harvest organizing. It's a lot. So no, not everybody got the best awesome policies.
Yeah, if we could go back to the UBI real quick for Andrew. There's not really much substance to his campaign other than his $1,000 for every person over 18. I believe that's what he's running on. I always took it as maybe it's not him per se, but as a kind of a backdoor to kind of gutting the welfare system, right? Because $1,000 a month, that's $12,000, right? That's no one can really sustain themselves off of that. So if he were to implement it, right, let's say he becomes president, that gives the Republicans and their Democrat cohorts the opportunity to kind of gut welfare, WIC, all of that.
He can't do anything with UBI as a president, because it's all state run. It's all independently run. So each state would have to make up their own entire UBI program, which is what they're already doing anyways. So it would never be nationalized in the way that he's speaking, but he can speak to these impoverished people in the way that he does, because it tugs on their heartstrings, right? He's like a bleeding heart liberal. But
I think that's even worse though, because a lot of states are controlled. They have Republican House and Senate, right? So let's say that they do implement it, they're going to do what Utah did when they, when they were given the option to expand Medicaid and Medicare, right? They
But
just say
aren't
no,
they? But aren't they
right? Or they'll
expanding?
start cutting it.
Well,
Well, I
well,
have a question.
well,
Aren't they expanding on that with the opioid addiction? Since so many of them are on
Expanding in
that.
UBI.
No, not UBI. Medicaid. With
well,
the
they've passed certain bills to deal. They've passed bills and they've provided funding for that, and that was maybe some of some of the criticisms that they got because when there's there's been heavy drug addiction and stuff like that in poorer communities, and money hasn't been the amount of money that they put towards like opioid addictions and stuff like that wasn't appropriated to other communities that had drug addiction problems. But just to kind of follow up on what Noah was saying, I was kind of thinking along these lines, right? Because see, with the whole the kind of like the centerpiece to this, and for those of you, if you guys don't follow him, you should really check him out. His name's Adogo Altrade. He does a channel called Cold Fusion, and he actually did a video on UBI and automation and stuff like this, maybe just like a week ago or something. And so when he mentioned it, he kind of spoke into detail about this robot tax thing, and it really got me to thinking, so if you were to implement something like that, I mean, essentially what you would do is you're saying, okay, well, what I'm going to do is I'm going to trade one for the other. So like the implementation of, say, a robot tax could be paid for if you pass something, or basically you pushed a national agenda for just all out automation. And who do you think would actually push for that? It would be the corporations who would do that.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's what that was my gripe with some of these conservatism about capitalism. I said, the reason why Karl Marx was so famous is because back in the 1800s and 1800s, like 17 to 1800s, the conglomerates back in those days went and asked Karl Marx to speak on the capitalism that was being invested into their pockets, and the results, like Charles Dickens and I think everybody forgot about those industrial days. I think that's what I like about history. Capitalism is no better than socialism, no better than communism. It's how you go about it, especially since they want to talk about, so they're against socialism. Well, the socialism in Venezuela, the reason why that's happening is because of the sanctions, and because if Venezuela decided they're not going to deal with American goods, they want to do something more for their own and develop their own and tax the rich. Because let's be honest, like the people in these rich people in these other countries leave and put their money in like safe haven countries, like safe haven bank area country. Let's just call it what it is. I was doing some, huh? No,
I just want to spend 5 more minutes on this, and then we're gonna have to switch topics, and Dr. Phoenix is gonna lead off the next topic.
Okay.
Okay. Well, actually, before you guys switch gears, I just wanted to ask Ngone a quick question, which will be a slight topic change, but it's going back to what we were talking about before. So let's say in the event that the reparations do go through, right? They're going to give, the $20 trillion. Some people kind of compared it to QE, but I feel like that's an incorrect, comparison, because those were towards banks, right? So when it gets like kind of the larger amount, if you don't have an institution to kind of channel it through, like when the Federal Reserve was giving banks, interest-free loans to go and profit off of, just handing over $20 trillion to a non-governmental entity, to just individuals, what do you kind of see what the problem with that is?
First of all, it's going to be so much waste. There's going to be a lot of loss of money. There's going to be it's going to be a free for all on people. It would be ill. I would think it would not it would not work very well. That's why I think something like that with that $20 trillion or whatever dollars we're talking about. I don't, as I myself and how I look at reparations, and I don't separate reparations from reconstruction. I believe that this would have to be tied into you would have to have an institutional infrastructure lined up to kind of to deal with this. I don't know if this would be just given out just raw checks to people. I just don't see that going down. I would think it would have to be institutional, and we would have to establish, somewhat of another governmental type of not so much agency, because you don't want to have a big, super huge bureaucracy once again to overlook, but under some level of governmental oversight. I think this would have to be done, and to work with your banks that you might have set up, your educational institutions, and so forth. This would be dispersed, and maybe some dollars, some small amount of dollars would go to individuals, but this would really be about strengthening the overall the Black community and Black people on the whole, and that would be done institutionally. That's ideally how I see it. I know others would think differently, but I don't think giving out checks like that would go over very well. I don't think that would be. I don't think that would do very well. Anti-grav, just giving you my
right. Yeah, that was my estimation of it. Like, you would need a nation state to kind of handle that level of money.
Yeah. That should be institutionally invested, and not be put in people's hands, but be put in institutions, and set things up for businesses, and one of the big things about reparation that we can also look at, what the government actually set up against it, was redlining. That came out of the government, and you got redlined, and much of your wealth got taken out that way. So once again, you would have to set up communities and areas that you could actually actualize the dollars of your property, and back your mortgages up federally and so forth, and and be able to invest in those properties, and have those as investments as opposed to long-term leases where you're paying out and not actually making any money or actually getting any equity out of your properties. Is the way they had this whole thing set up that was designed to tear you out of the frame later on down the line, which we saw earlier then, and we saw it hit its peak in 2008. So I would look at it like that. There's some real complex pieces to this, I would think, but more so than anything else right now, I believe that as long as you can get this into Congress and push this right now while the iron is hot, push it, and we could certainly work the details out later. We have enough smart people, enough people who understand how this thing could be done to work out the details on this later. But get this thing moving is my take on that initially. Well, one step at a time.
Mike, which way did you want to shift gears?
Dr. Phoenix could lead us off, and you have anything in your mind, Dr. Phoenix, that you think that we should you can enlighten us on and discuss?
Again, just to answer a couple things in the chat to Black Ooze Strikes. Health systems as a whole, to answer your question, I saw your question, brother. I did respond to it, but I'll say it here. Health systems as a whole are not very profitable. Much of the profit from health goes to insurance. Mm-hmm. The insurance companies really are the ones who really have the major control over the health system. It's not the health systems themselves. It's not the physicians, the nurses. No, it's really the insurance companies. They are the ones that make or break patients. So typically, if I gave an estimate, I would put it at somewhere around 5%. And you can Google this, but there has been a significant drop off in revenue and margins for health systems over the past few years. So, if I were to give an estimate to, I'd put it somewhere around 5% or so. In relation to, I don't know, there's a brother in the chat room, his name is Hebrew something. he's talking about eating healthy. I don't think you heard what's being discussed here, brother. We're talking about the major problem in healthcare as it pertains to Black people is capitalization. If you cannot afford to eat better, how the hell are you going to eat organic?
Mm-hmm.
You go to any place, you go to Trader Joe's or Whole Foods or where I'm at here in Milwaukee, you go to an Outpost.
Mm-hmm.
Your average organic item is gonna. You go buy some organic apples, you go be out of $20 damn near.
Oh yeah, unless you go to a farmer's market.
Yeah, and I mean, and there are those that are popping up. I mean, again, there are local entities that are doing farmers markets, and so they're happening. But those are small scale solutions to dealing with the major problem that we face as a people, which is a lack of capitalization. So again, if we know most Black folks tend to live in areas that are, one, economically deprived,
Mm-hmm.
two, they're food deserts, which means you're going to have to travel to the nicer areas to get food. And and we already know transportation can be an issue for many people. I mean, again, you can look up there's plenty of, you can go to PubMed, you can go to NIH. There's plenty of studies on this, plenty of research. Don't take my word for it. Do it yourself.
And
And
it's
so,
also, I don't mean to interrupt you, Dr. Phoenix. And it's also a violation of the United Nations Charter 7. I believe it's Charter 7, and or not Charter 7, but Chapter 7 of the Charter, that stipulates that citizens of a country must have access to basic necessities in order to survive. And what Dr. Phoenix is referring to is that there's a lot of the basic necessities to survive needs not being met by the federal government. Look at Katrina, Hurricane Katrina in New Orleans and in Louisiana, and then look at what happened in Houston. You see the same replicated effects of disaster that's leaving people high and dry. So as Dr. Phoenix was saying, that the capitalization is the issue, as well as job discrimination, right? So you don't get hired for that that hourly wage that is demanded of you. We did a whole hangout on this about racism in the workplace, where African American men are being denied opportunities or being underpaid than their white male counterpart, which means that he has less spending power, which means that he has less ability to seek out better treatment. And we know that Black men don't go to the hospital as much as they should.
Let me speak to that real quick on that, Mike.
Right ahead.
There's a very good study anyone can Google this. It's called the Tyrone versus Tyler. And basically the gist of the study was that Tyler was a white male, formerly incarcerated, versus Tyrone, who had a college education, baccalaureate educated, and the white male that was a felon got more callbacks from employers than Tyrone, who was not a felon, college educated, had a stellar resume, but he got screened out. Why? Because his name was Tyrone.
Yep.
So again, we're dealing with capitalization, and capitalization is just one part of the systemic issues we face across the board. Again, what Mike was saying is 100% true, because I see brothers in the chat talking about eating well. I got brothers that come to me all the time. That come to me offline. Brothers that are old enough to be my father, but they're walking around looking like they're in their second and third trimester, and they got 500 for their blood sugar levels.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm asking these brothers saying, like, what can I do? I'm going to see my provider, but they got me on these pills, and okay, brother, but I want to stop taking these pills. So I say, okay, well, let's start here. What do you do every day? When I started helping them lay out what do they do every day, then I started to see all these little things that they do that they don't account for. And then I say, okay, well, let's start here. Let's start with some of the basics. And one of the basic things I ask brothers, okay, what do you do for them? Many brothers are underemployed. We already know that, and we were talking about this with AI and automation is going to put a lot of Black folks out of work. We know that many, if not most, Black folks are in positions are in jobs that are primed to be completely that are going to be obsolete in the coming years because of automation. Low skill, low wage jobs. Period. You go to any Walmart, who do you see in those damn security trucks cruising around the damn parking lot? It's brothers. You go to most places, who are the security guards? It's brothers. Yeah, I can go to the hospital. You go to the hospital. Who are the folks that are transporting patients? Black folks. Who are the folks that are doing the little the janitors? Black folks. So again, we exist in many sectors of the economy that are considered low skill, low wage.
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say that to your point about Tyrone versus Tyler, we actually discussed this some time ago with a former member of the Brain Trust. LinkedIn, they did an experiment on LinkedIn where they had a black male's LinkedIn profile versus a white male's LinkedIn profile. These were generic. All they did was switch the LinkedIn picture, right, and switched a few words up on the LinkedIn profile, but they were pretty much the same if you were an HR person looking at this. And what they found on LinkedIn was that you can look at the views of a LinkedIn candidate's profile and see how many views it's getting. The white male got twice as many views than the black male candidate, despite the fact that they have both similar profiles. So we know that there's an agenda to actually isolate and keep black males from opportunities that they are most likely deserving of.
One other thing I did want to mention with regards to access to food and things of that sort. There's a lot. Farmers markets nowadays also, and I'm not, just putting, this is just a statement of fact. I'm not like, this isn't some sort of disparaging comment or anything like that, but farmers markets do accept WIC and they accept EBT.
Yes, so they do.
If that is what you use to have to buy food, you can go and buy very good, local grown food, produce, and all that type of stuff from farmers market with WIC and EBT. I don't know if a lot of people know that.
Yeah, and I'll give you a good. I will give you a good example. But when I was in undergrad, so I talked about this previously, but I was a Ronald E. McNair scholar. So the project that I worked on, I did it with the Milwaukee Health Department and the Medical College of Wisconsin. And so what we did, we went into low-income communities, and we were looking for ways to diagnose people with diabetes and diabetic eye diseases. And because most of the folks on this channel, on this panel, and in the chat are black males, I'm just gonna keep it straight up and down honest with you. Black men are overrepresented in diabetes. One, ocular diseases, specifically diabetic retinopathy, is the #1 cause of blindness in working age adults, and specifically in black men. So what we were doing was that we were figuring out ways how to use camera systems. And again, I talked about this briefly about where we were using AI intelligence and imaging and stuff like this to try to figure out, how can we make eye care affordable? Because we know that eye care can be very expensive. So, we were looking at ways of figuring out how to diagnose people just by using this camera system was about $50,000, but we were looking at developing an app, because if you Google this, you can find articles of where they're doing this stuff in India and places like that, where they're using AI powered apps to diagnose diabetic retinopathy in patients with diabetes, because we already suspect that the longer you have diabetes, the more likely it is you will develop that. And so again, when I'm talking about black men existing in a space in this economy and in this society where, one, we are underemployed or unemployed, and for the most part, I will also add that too, for the most part, black men are invisible in this society. Again, when we look at a lot of stuff, unlike, compared to black women who although health risks are similar to black men, they tend to have slightly better outcomes than black men. Why? Because black women tend to be more proactive in general. And most of the time, it's not brothers that are coming to me. It's their mothers, their sisters, their wives that are coming to me. And so, because I see some brothers talking about all this stuff in the chat, again, the problem is that, we can talk about, brothers eating well and black folks eating well and all this organic stuff. But again, if the number one issue we know we're dealing with is capital, as you just highlighted with the LinkedIn experiment, as I highlighted with the Tyrone Tyler experiment. In fact, you can Google this too. A black woman replicated that same experiment. And she got the exact same results. The white girl got more views than got more callbacks than she did. She changed the name, and the white girl, she changed the name from what we would call a black sounding name to a white sounding name, and she got more callbacks. So again, we can replicate this across the board. So to just sit here and say, "Oh, eat better," that how will you eat better if we know that most black people are broke? And the Gone 11 said it perfectly, which was that most folks are only one medical emergency away from bankruptcy. We know that medical debt is one of the 3 top causes of bankruptcy in this country. We know it. If you got a family member with cancer, that would bankrupt most folks. You got a family member that got diabetes, that had diabetes for 10, 20 years, that they're struggling in most cases. They got congestive heart failure. They're struggling. I don't know if you guys know, but the average heart transplant costs at minimum $350,000. Minimum.
Dr. Phoenix, I have a question for you, actually, on that. Okay, so let's say we keep the economic status the way it is, right? Black people generally more likely to be underemployed or unemployed, right? Lack of capital. But we change the healthcare system. Let's say it goes full socialized medicine, like UK, for example.
I used to live in London.
Go ahead.
I used to live in London, so yeah, I know.
Okay, so we go NHS style, full socialized medicine. What would then be the impact on the stuff you were talking about? All else, equal in terms of capital and money.
Again, goes back to what I said earlier about behavior. Behavior is a major driver too of health outcomes in people. And this is something that I know a lot of people ain't about to like what I'm about to say, but this needs to be said. Most black people want to have their cake and eat it too. You think you can eat Big Mama's greens on every Sunday? You can eat a half a bucket of fried chicken, and then think the next day you go be okay. Then think that, okay, well, I have some chest pain. Oh, I show up in the ER. Oh, well, we think you might have had a mini heart attack. Or, oh, well, I got some weakness on one side of my body. Well, we think you might have had a mini stroke. So then what happens is that, if we don't begin to address some of the fundamental issues that are at play here, because again, we can still make the health, we can still socialize medicine, but we know that there are some dysfunctions within Black society that need to be addressed. One of them being that we do have very unhealthy diets. Going to some of the comments in the chat, we do have very unhealthy diets, but do you know how difficult it is to get people to change their diets? Why do you think most people, why do you think you only get 15 minutes with your provider? If we sat down and told most folks what they need to do to change their diet, we already know only about 10% of them will do it. And that's best estimate. We know that. Again, you have to look at the society as a whole. Look at the country you live in. This is still America. This is still, even with a lack of capitalization, access to things that make us feel good is pretty accessible. There are ways to indulge in dysfunctional behavior for very cheap. I mean, just look at Black YouTube.
Yeah. Go ahead, Dr. Phoenix, if you want to continue.
No, go ahead. The brother can say whatever he needed to say.
I was just saying, with whatever topic you want to go with, we're following right behind you. So.
Yeah, you guys heard it from Dr. Phoenix. Grits are banned.
No,
chitlins, greens, all of that.
Look, I never grew up in that household where I ate that stuff, so I'll be clear about that. But I had family members, they ate the greens, they ate the chitlins, and I can tell you right now, at least my mother, at least two of her well, one of her sisters died from cervical cancer. One had a sudden heart attack, died from that. And this is and in fact, just to go into the cancer thing, endometrial cancers, again, these are things that affect women, are some of the deadliest cancers out there. You know, hormone mediated cancers like breast cancer in women, or uterine cancer in women, prostate cancer in men, have, for Black folks, and I'll specifically speak to prostate cancer because this is a panel of mostly men. Black men have a 6 times higher mortality rate than white men. Meaning that if you get prostate cancer, one, you're going to get there's a high likelihood you're going to get diagnosed with a more aggressive form of it. It's going to be in the later stages. And once prostate cancer because as a whole, prostate cancer tends to be slow growing, but once prostate cancer metastasizes, it's virtually untreatable. And so Black men tend to get diagnosed, and my grandfather died from prostate cancer. So Black men tend to get diagnosed with prostate cancer at higher rates and have higher mortality rates as a result. And a huge part of what happens with us, again, is because going back to what Mike V said earlier about, we know Black men don't seek treatment like that. I get brothers come to me all the time. Yeah, that he says, well, and I don't want to be too graphic here. Yeah, brother, I go to the bathroom and there's blood in the toilet. I said, when the last time you had a colonoscopy? Man, I don't know, man. I ain't never had one. How old are you, brother? Well, I'm 55. Okay, brother, you should have started getting colonoscopies minimum 45. I usually recommend the brothers to start pushing to get colonoscopies at 40. I recommend the brothers to start getting PSA testing at 40. Why? Because we know that Black men tend to develop cancer, tend to have higher rates of prostate cancer and colorectal cancer. Those tend to be the 2 major causes of cancer-related deaths in Black men. It's prostate and colorectal cancers. And so, again, when we're looking at the mortality rates from this and understanding, well, what are the associated behaviors? Brothers will sit there and ignore all of the warning signs until it becomes so unbearable, I have to go see someone.
I did mine's at 39, so I'm glad that you mentioned. I did last summer, so had a battery of those tests ran, even though I didn't need it. I just the opportunity was there, so just took it.
No, and again, I recommend it. Like I said, I go to the VA because I'm a veteran, but I get my wellness checkup every year. I get my panel, I get my blood panel, everything checked every year. It is so difficult to get Black men to just even commit to just doing some of the basic health maintenance. Again, going back to those behaviors. No matter how many people sit here in the chat and say, okay, yeah, eat well, you still need to get a wellness exam. There are a lot of folks who eat well, a lot of folks who lift weights and work out, and you know what? They are unhealthy. There are folks who weigh 100 that are 5'10" and weigh 140 pounds, but they have a heart of an 80-year-old.
Wow.
So again, I mean, it's a very well-known fact. When Martin Luther King was killed and the subsequent autopsy was performed, he died at 39, but the medical examiner that did the autopsy said he had a heart of an 80-year-old man. Stress is a killer. And I would argue stress is probably the number 1 killer of Black men.
Well, fighting all that white supremacy kind of puts a lot of stress on your heart too. I mean, getting spaghetti and meatballs dumped on your head.
Yeah, I mean, so it's not just a matter of eating well, not to say that these things don't matter, but there's a convergence of issues of factors that come into play when we're talking about determine your health. It's not just eating well. I think that a very good argument could be made that stress is probably the major killer of Black men. And specifically, there was an article, I want to say it was in the New York Times, I believe, last summer, where they talked about Black men specifically were more likely to be adherent to treatment and medical advice if their provider was a Black man or a Black person in general. But but black men tend to relate specifically well to other black men.
Mm-hmm.
And so again, these are all things, and this is part of why I'm here and why, I add my input is because, I try to push to get more black men into healthcare, get more black men into the biomedical research arena, because these things are fundamentally important to not just our overall health, but advancing the health of all black men. Because right now, you have the major initiative that is sweeping across the nation right now. All of us, you all can go to the website, allofus.gov, I believe. Yeah, allofus.gov, or just Google it, you'll get to the website. But this is a major initiative where they're going into black communities. They're going into every community, but specifically, they want to get black folks. Because why? Because part of the problem, well, not problem, but part of the reason is that we know that participation of black people in biomedical research in areas of genetics and genomics has always been low. Again, you conjure up stories of Tuskegee and stuff like that.
Henrietta Lacks.
Yeah, Henrietta Lacks, exactly. So and again, black folks' in trepidation to that is very well founded. But again, much of what how can we expect to deal with white supremacy if we don't even understand our own enemy? We don't even understand the knowledge that he uses against us. And part of you guys talk about AI and automation. This is heavy in healthcare. Healthcare is the new frontier. That's why you see so many initiatives now that are aimed specifically at the health system.
Mm-hmm.
Because we know that, especially as it pertains to black folks, we know that black people don't typically get the standard of care. They're typically underrepresented, and I've seen this in my own personal practice. I've seen folks that should have got pacemakers that didn't get pacemakers. But the white person that smoked a bunch of cigarettes, keeps wrecking his heart, got a pacemaker.
And it was a black man who invented the pacemaker.
Yes, it was. It was a black man. It was a black man by the name of Vivian Thomas that pretty much put Johns Hopkins on the map in the field of cardiology.
Yep.
And so again, we think about, as we consider the fundamental realities of being a black man. I don't care if you're ADOS or you're immigrant or you're first generation, second generation. I don't give a damn, because it's the same. Because of the healthcare system views all black people the same, especially in the areas of genetics and genomics research. Mm-hmm. Because again, I was actually watching a video a few days ago from the Human Genome Institute, which is one of the 27 schools of health of the NIH, and there was a PharmD out of Northwestern, and she was talking about she was talking about how certain genes were being isolated from folks with African ancestry. They were isolating certain genes that they were using to develop certain medications, certain classes of medication, hypertension medications. So, for example, if you talk about hypertension, and this can be Googled as well, we know that black people don't respond well to a class of hypertensive medications known as beta blockers. And again, folks can Google this. So why? Because typically the kind of hypertension black people tend to get. Black people tend to get hypertension that's really associated with damage to the actual tubules. Excuse me, I can't pronounce words tonight. To the kidneys. I'll just leave it at that. And so again, what happens in that case is that because you get damage to the tubules of the kidneys, and these are this is the area where filtration occurs, where your urine is formed at. Mm. And so again, we know that with black folks in those areas, what happens is that the particles that typically get filtered in that area remain in that area. They don't get excreted in your urine, so they build up and eventually they cause damage to those cells in that part of the kidneys. So again, that in that case, beta blockers don't work. So a lot of times you'll see folks get what we call an angiotensin II receptor blocker. So basically, well, I'm not going to explain it, but the point is some of those medications in that class are called valsartan or losartan. And if anyone is familiar over probably this year alone, you've seen a lot of stories about losartan getting pulled off the market. Because they're in the manufacturing process, there were chemicals that were added into the manufacturing of this medication that were known to be carcinogens. And I just had a patient today who came in who was on losartan, And he said, yeah, he's been on it for a little over a year. And his provider put on. And I said, your provider didn't check your provider has not been up to date on the current knowledge out here. That there's a recall on losartan. And so again, just being just health literate, just understanding, asking the right questions are also a major part of your health. But as well as understanding that, we have to be fundamentally engaged, because one of the major things I do a lot is that I end up doing a lot of education. So I get folks come to me, and this is not a dig on brothers, but when I get the sisters coming to me, the sisters want to pay a brother. I get the brothers coming to me, they want it for free. I'm just gonna keep it 100 with you. Brothers don't want to pay.
Yeah, brothers. Brothers. They financially averse to anything that's beneficial to them. You can see that in the manosphere, how much money moves around on topics and discussions that have no immediate benefit to them at all, or long-term benefit at all.
I don't say no long-term benefit.
Yeah.
I mean, we should have research centers in every black neighborhood studying the benefits of cannabis and hemp and things of that nature.
I mean, cannabis is sweeping the country.
Go ahead, doctor.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, cannabis is sweeping the country. I was at a cannabis store about a month ago here in Wisconsin, and it was a brother running it. And you don't need to have a healthcare background to run this, to operate this. Now, if you want us to prescribe medical marijuana, yeah, that's a different story. And again, we're seeing now that it's only a matter of time before all 50 states eventually have, they're eventually going to legalize marijuana, and you're going to have medical marijuana that is just going to be a part of healthcare.
Well, Dr. Phoenix, you remember our conversation we had Saturday night?
Yes, sir.
I was kind of telling you about, some of what, myself and Anti-Gravity, that's where we're business partners. And, that's, some of our what it is that we're trying to do and where we're trying to go with a lot of this. We talked about compound isolation and all of that type of stuff. I mean, so when you say 50-state legalization and, the medical applications of it, I mean, folks, what he's essentially talking about here is that what you'll start to have is you're going to have specific compounds that they're going to find that's going to neutralize some sort of ailment. They're going to find that this compound here will completely get rid of your arthritis within 30 to 60 days if you do a daily regimen of it. Noah and I reported on the last cannabis hangout about CBD potentially being used as an antibiotic.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So, this is where it's all going. And I mean, and right now is the time for us to really start to pursue these things. And now I'm not saying just hemp and cannabis, but we're talking about just the medical profession and the biosciences as a whole, because that's part of it.
Look, where I'm at here in Wisconsin, they're hedging their bets on biotech, AI, tech in general, biomedical research. I mean, my alma mater, Marquette University, University of Wisconsin-Madison. They have a partnership. Oh yeah, the Medical College of Wisconsin. Excuse me. There's a major partnership, and what they're doing, they're funding all kinds of startups. There's so much angel investor. There's so much money coming into Wisconsin just for startups in the areas of biotech, biopharmaceuticals, the cannabis industry. I can tell you for a fact, I know at least there have been at least $1 billion poured into this state for just the cannabis industry alone.
Well,
and right now, and as everyone is familiar, the DNC is going to be here next summer in Milwaukee. And right now, you do have you have black businesses here, but there's a registry here in Milwaukee for black for black business owner, for business owners in general, but specifically, you know, they are, you know, you have the Black Chamber of Commerce. They're really trying to reach out, but the city alone has gotten at least $500 million in just credit extended to it just to fund the DNC. Wow. So we're talking about a month. We're talking about just in a month, the month of June through July, that you're gonna have so much damn money coming through this city. I mean, you got hotels booked out now. They're already booked out.
Yeah, they're already booked. Yeah, I would imagine.
They're booked out. They're already booked a year out.
Yeah.
And so again, you know, so in these areas, you know, and just to go, and I'm sorry to give you, give me just a second here, Dahlia. Just to go back to what Complex said, it is so important for brothers to really get involved in not just the cannabis, because again, if you consider cannabis, there's at least 12 compounds that are being looked at right now in just the hemp plant alone. At least 12 compounds, not just the CBD. Mm-hmm. And we know that as a whole, CBD is just by itself is good for so many issues, autoimmune issues, neurological, neuropsychiatric issues. So folks who might have MS, Alzheimer's, which is that I can tell you right now, the next big health issue for Black folks right now is going to be Alzheimer's.
Wow.
You're looking at, if you're beyond the age of 65, you're looking at, if you're Black, you're looking at about a almost 50% chance again of developing Alzheimer's at some point.
And a lot of that stuff is predictive, based on you know, the technology that we have today, like machine learning, artificial intelligence. Those data sets get fed in there based on the childhood behavior. They can model all that stuff, and they can determine whether or not you'll end up with Alzheimer's at some point. So a lot of this stuff, you know, could actually be sought out, you know, just from some of the technology that we have today. I think you've worked on data sets and for machine learning models. So getting better at, you know, being proactive on some of these conditions are actually in our favor.
Yeah, I mean, again, you guys talk about it all the time. I mean, right now, I mean, there's just so much crosstalk between all these different industries, health, tech, biopharmaceutical. I mean, they're all talking to each other. I can tell you right now, the NIH is hunting for data scientists. They need data scientists at the master's and the doctoral.
Well, I have a question to ask since you're in the field. Have you read the book Medical Apartheid, and how much of that affects the Black community in America when it comes to interacting with your practitioner of the pharmaceuticals, birth, how?
Okay, I get what you're saying. Okay, so here's the thing. I'm very well aware of the book. I'm very well aware of what the gist of the book is, but I don't necessarily need to read the book to know exactly what it's talking about, because I live it almost every day for the most part. So again, I'll give you an example. Where I do some of my rotations at, I had a Black patient today, and so I'm the only Black clinician there. You know, everybody else is white. Mm-hmm. And I've been rotating at this place now for probably about 2-3 months almost. And so again, you know, when I do see a Black patient, and in fact, one of the Black patients that I do see regularly, he's a retired Black, I don't even call him retired, but he's a Black pharmacist. And not only is he a Black pharmacist, this is an 89-year-old Black man that was a pharmacist that at one point he had the first Black-owned pharmacy here in Milwaukee. And so again, but he's a patient there because he has some issues with venous insufficiency. But again, to make it really clear, whenever I see a Black patient, I make it my personal goal to make sure that I'm in that room. If they're seeing that, they're seeing the whoever they're seeing, I make it my personal goal to make sure that I'm in that room and that they understand exactly what's being told to them. Mm-hmm. Now, again, you know, like I said before, black men respond well to other black men. So again, you know, going back to that, I would say that as a whole, you know, it is my goal to make sure that black people, no matter where I'm at, no matter what clinical setting I'm in, they're getting the standard of care. That is if I'm there, they will get the standard of care. Now, as a whole, to answer that, to go into some of the other stuff, it is very well known that the field of psychology was built off the study of black slaves.
Yep.
You know, they had terms like drapetomania, which is what they referred to slaves who wanted to escape bondage, so they ran away. So they called it drapetomania. You can Google this. We know that the field of obstetrics and gynecology was built off the study of black female slaves. And again, they had a statue of this particular physician. I want to say it was in New York, in Central Park, if I remember correctly. And they had to tear the statue down because, again,
didn't that dude, he did like some of the most heinous shit.
Yeah,
to them, right? I mean, no anesthesia.
Yeah,
and
because
torture.
Yeah, because because why? The thought, and it's still pervasive to this day in healthcare, is that black folks perceive pain differently than everybody else. In fact, we're perceived as having a higher threshold for pain, even though we know that's not true.
Especially black men.
Exactly.
Especially, and they actually give you less pain medication because of that, and that's strictly pure racism.
Yeah. So again, and you guys were talking about the opioid crisis. I did some work with the Kenosha Health Department a few years ago, and I worked specifically with what they call the Vivitrol program. So Vivitrol is also known as naltrexone, which is an opioid antagonist. So you get the shot every 28 days, and this is covered by Medicare, Medicaid, and it's about $1,500 a shot. But this program was part of a rehabilitation program for offenders who commit drug-related offenses. And so, who were all the folks in this program? White. Again, but we know that issues of opioid dependency have always been a problem throughout the history. I mean, you go back to Nicky Barnes and Frank Lucas, and you go back to Bumpy Johnson. When we think about just sort of the history of heroin and opioid use in this country, it has always been there. But again, it's always been well known if you read some of the statistics for soldiers coming back from the Vietnam War, put the opioid dependency rates, addiction rates at upwards of 80%. So it's been very well known about the opioid issues. It kind of comes and goes in waves and stuff like that.
We had it here at the turn of the century. We had it here in the 18th century with respect. Remember the opium wars that you had over there in China, and where literally Britain was a narco state, actually pushing this, and you had Chinese being strung out, and that was also happening here in the United States. So opioid problems here in this country have gone back 200 years. Yeah, this is nothing new here. It's actually nothing new.
I mean, again, you can say the same thing of Afghanistan. It is very well known. Afghanistan has one of the largest opioid poppy seed crops in the world. They have one of the largest supplies of opioid poppy seed crops in the world.
I didn't realize that Iran they had a very bad opioid crisis there as well.
Yeah. So to continue with that, when you think about, for example, how we're medicated, we know that for a fact, and Nagone 11 put this very well. We're under medicated, especially in the areas for pain. We also think about how I was talking about the OB-GYN and stuff like that. We know that Black people do not tend to get the standard of care. If you walk into an ER, for example, and you say, well, they ask you, well, what brings you in? What is your complaint? You say, well, I have chest pain. So we know that automatically we go into our heart attack protocol. So what's the first thing you're supposed to do? You're supposed to get EKGs. Now, a lot of times folks will get EKGs. and they'll get the EKG, but what happens is after that they're like, well, it looks fine, so we'll send you home. And then next thing you know, the person dropped dead from a heart attack. I mean, again, we saw this with last summer with P Diddy's baby mama, what's her name, Kim Porter, where she died from pneumonia. Has everyone ever heard of a 40-year-old dying from pneumonia?
Yo, you know what, man? I know somebody who was a close friend of hers, and like it messed her up because she's like around the same age, and yeah, like it's kind of threw her for a loop. So she's really become like super health conscious as a result of that.
Yeah, but here's the thing.
Yeah.
Here's the interesting thing about pneumonia. We know that pneumonia typically does not kill adults. So typically, the folks most vulnerable to dying from pneumonia are the elderly
and children.
Yeah. So again, so every senior, if you're 60, if you're I think it's 63, 62, something like that. But every senior that comes in, you get a pneumonia vaccination. Now, granted, I know folks feel a little funny style about vaccinations in this chat room. But again, we get this as a prophylaxis measure. So when you consider that against, okay, well, what happens for Black folks? Do Black folks get this? In many cases, no. Black folks don't get a lot of these basic preventive measures that take place within the health system. We know that Black folks, for a fact, they tend to have higher complications in surgery. Black women, for example, Black women get the most hysterectomies out of any group of women. And we know that they're doing uterine transplants now. Again, a major issue too with, if we're going to stay on this whole medical apartheid, we know that a lot of Black women get pushed into getting C-sections. I would say upwards about 50% of Black babies born are born a cesarean section when they don't need to be. On top of the fact that once they're born, most Black women get pushed into feeding your infants formula. So
that's a double whammy. That's a double whammy.
You got the nurses and the physicians that push you. Why? Because many of them on the payroll of these companies that produce infant formula. Infamil. Yeah. And anyone that knows that infant formula is the worst damn thing you can give to a baby. It is utterly useless to a baby. That's why if you ever see any baby that's ever, they got the bottle with the with the little Infamil mixture, whatever they use. What's the first thing the baby's doing? Throwing it back up.
Throwing it back out, or literally just pushing the nipple out of their mouth.
Yeah, because it's the baby rejecting it. So we know, and I'll give you a good example. When I was in nursing school, we had lactation specialists here in Wisconsin. There's only like 2 of them that are certified in Wisconsin, and they're white women. And they we had a series of lectures on maternal fetal and obstetrics, high risk pregnancies and stuff like that. And so again, going back to the lactation issue, we know that most Black women don't breastfeed. Some of the numbers out here put it upwards about 80%. We keep getting to this magical 80% number. And so again, we know that because most Black women don't breastfeed, most Black babies grow up, they're being raised on infant formula. And it's very well known that infant breastfeeding does what? One, it's been shown that babies who are breastfed actually have higher IQs. On top of the fact,
don't they have stronger immune systems also?
Exactly, because the mother.
It makes a lot of sense. Yes. Yeah. I mean, first of all, breast milk is designed for humans. I mean, you give people calf milk. That's just designed for a calf. So,
yes, exactly.
So at the end of the day, humans are not calves. I mean, so breast milk but the milk industry, the people that produce Similac and everything else like that, which also I believe has a certain level of, like, they have roids in them because these kids get so big and so bloated, so blasted out, and by the time they're 6 years old, they're damn near having their periods and stuff, and shit is crazy.
Yeah. I was gonna segue into that, talking about some of those issues.
So, I mean, it's frightening.
Yeah, so to continue with that, you know, we know at a minimum every black child should be breastfed for a minimum from birth for at least a year, up until at the minimum 1 year of age. Now, I know there are many white women, I know many non-black women, they will continue breastfeeding well into the 3-4 years old. We know that. And it's shown to have long-term benefits. And to go to what Nagon said, yes, Complex said, we know that, how babies get their initial immune system comes from the mother. The mother gives the baby the passive immune system through her breast milk.
And it's literally like every time they feed them, it's like an update, like they update the antibodies, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So very well.
I thought the minimum was supposed to be 2 years, or is that more of a cultural thing?
I mean, at the minimum in clinical science, we at a minimum we say 1 year, but we know specifically when we're dealing with a black population, we know that does not typically occur. For example, and just to keep this on this, we know that also for every black woman in here that may be expecting, or you got a family member that's expecting, or they have a baby or whatever. If you know a woman, that you automatically get a voucher for a breast pump. It's automatically covered, and they give you a voucher for some of the best ones on the market. Free, completely free. So if a baby has latching issues, meaning that they have difficulty latching onto the breast, you can use a breast pump, get the milk that way, feed into feed it, put in a bottle, and you can give it to the baby then in that manner. So one of the things to keep in mind is to, and just to segue into what Nagon was just talking about with early menses in women. Early menses in young black women is associated with higher risk of breast cancer, endometrial cancers, and there are some studies that are even talking about even MS and Alzheimer's. And so again, we know that many black females tend to start their menses very early compared to other groups of young girls, and a lot of it is because again, black children are not breastfed. They're fed the infant meal, Similac, whatever you want to call it. They're giving cow's milk. You should never give your damn baby a cow's milk. Never. Going to what Nagon said, never give your baby cow's milk. Never.
But you do see women, I was just going to say that you do see women in the manosphere having children and not actually breastfeeding them. They're too busy in the background wailing for their mommy. This is in another country.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I thought you were talking about.
Did you say calcium?
North Carolina area.
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Did you say calcium?
No, Similac. I remember that infant. I remember that, and my mom.
He's asking Dr. Phoenix.
What's up, sir?
No, I didn't hear Similac. I heard like calcium, or you said I don't know what you said.
I said cow's milk.
Cow's milk.
Cow's milk. Oh, okay.
Well, I remember.
At what age? Or
infant.
Total.
I'm saying avoid cow's milk altogether.
Yeah.
Oh man.
I drink oat milk.
20-some years of cow's milk.
I'm okay. I'm somewhat okay with goat milk. In general, I mean,
we really don't need milk. It's extremely fatty. I mean, cow. You don't need it. I mean, cow's milk. And if you look at calf's milk, you're drinking that shit is designed for a calf. A calf is born. That shit is born about 50 pounds, and about 30 pounds or so. And then within 6 months, this bad boy's a big ass cow. This shit is designed to make your ass grow and get fat quick. That's designed for a cow. It's designed for a cow. You ain't a cow, man. So as far as I'm concerned, why am I drinking shit for a cow? That's just wrong.
I gotta tell you, if I didn't become lactose intolerant, I'd still be drinking that stuff, man.
Actually, it's funny.
But you become lactose intolerant.
You become
lactose intolerant for a reason. You don't need it. You don't need milk. You don't need it. I mean, they've sold that to you because an industry is pushing it. You don't need it. You don't
Yeah.
need that shit that goes into a calf is designed to grow you super big, super fast.
Well, they
You know what I'm
also
saying? That's just designed for a cow. So that's not how human beings are designed. You are not a cow.
It's well known in clinical medicine. Is well known that most Black people are lactose intolerant. Most Asians are lactose intolerant. Most Native Americans are lactose intolerant. The only folks that are not truly lactose intolerant are whites, Caucasians.
I don't know about that, Dr. Phoenix, because especially depends on which African, tribe you're from or the region, but drinking milk, whether it's cow's milk or goat milk, is, let's just say, like, outside before outside of in the U.S., none of my family members have ever been lactose intolerant.
Where are you from?
Somalia.
Yeah. Again, this is generally directed at typically
Black Americans.
Yeah, Black Americans. ADOS typically is pretty well known. Most of us are lactose intolerant. Like, I'm lactose intolerant. I don't drink. I don't.
Well,
So
is that just directly with just cow's milk? What happens if you drink like camel milk or something like that?
Oh my God! Are you kidding me? Anti-gravity.
I mean, again, this is one of these things. Like, we have to.
When I was in Kenya, I was drinking camel milk every day, man. I'm telling you.
But we also have to consider the source. How large is a camel?
It's huge.
Okay, so naturally, the milk that's required to get a camel from a baby up until that, the milk has to be loaded with tons of protein, tons of fat,
and crazy calories and fat. It's designed to get big on this. It's designed to get you fat and big. That's why human beings, it's not good for us. It just is a you're laughing, but it's funny because it's true. Your ass ain't a
You
cow,
gotta drink the milk to get swole, though.
Yeah. You gonna get swole, all right. You gonna get plenty swole. So we're not cows. Man.
So, like, since we're on the medical apartheid thing, and what your notion is, and I was gonna delve into the reproductive system on both sides. First, the Black men, how they would view the reproductive system, because I seen a lot of clinical areas in the white community who are struggling to have children versus the Black community that they'd have struggles, but it's not like as much of a struggle as the white community. And how much they get like funded and stuff.
You mean like in vitro fertilization centers?
Yeah, basically that. And
again, I mean, this is just, there have been studies that talked about this, but we know that there's an overrepresentation of Planned Parenthoods and abortion clinics within Black communities. And then on the other end of that, typically in white communities, you see a lot of in vitro fertilization clinics and stuff like that. So I mean, subjectively speaking, yes, that could be true. But also, despite the issues Black folks have with each other, we still like to have sex with each other. So again, that's something that Black folks will never stop doing. And again, when we talk about reproductive issues, again, we know that historically for Black men, the phallus has always been sort of this representation of virility and masculinity. Again, if you look at the lynchings, one of the first things they always did was castrate the man. There's numerous stories of the Black men being castrated, and the phallus was kept as a souvenir. They would preserve it and stuff like that. So again, the Black men as a whole, we understand that genes that make us African are dominant genes. We know that white genes are recessive genes. It's very well known. There's no debate on that. Hence why they're only about 5-7% of the world population, compared to folks who look like us are overrepresented. So I mean, again, we this goes back to what I was saying earlier about, Black women are having their uteruses removed at an alarming rate. I mean, Black women do tend to get uterine fibroids and stuff like that. However, we're also seeing that white women on the other hand are getting uterine transplants, and many of the uterine transplants that they're getting are coming from Black donors. So,
Yeah.
I have, whenever you're finished, I have a question for you, Doctor, as well.
Yep, go ahead, sir.
Oh, are you done? Okay. So, when I was living in this, actually, this is maybe an issue you can speak to that's not, often discussed. But, when I was living in China, there was a lot of health problems related to infertility in the men. And even particularly with one of my friends who was, trying to have a baby with his wife, it was linked to pollution. So I don't know if you can speak to.
Yeah, I can speak to
there's
that
not
because
as much pollution in the U.S., but if you could kind of speak to
I don't know if I would agree
the
with that.
environmental benefits.
I don't know if I would agree with. I think there's quite a bit of pollution in the U.S. The question is, where's the pollution at?
Well, less than China, but
yeah, obviously it's less than China. But I'll take people back to the Beijing Olympics a decade or so. That's your answer.
Right.
Yeah, everybody saw the pictures of the skyline. That's your answer. I'll just leave it at that much. I mean, it's very well known that pollution has always been rampant in China. This is one of the major byproducts of that rapid industrialization and economic growth that they're experiencing. I mean, we're talking about a country of more than 2 billion people or so, where you just had this massive economic growth in a relatively short period of time. It was only in the 1960s where the Chinese were actually kicking the opioid dependency that they got that the British got them addicted to. And in about 60 or so years, here we are now.
No, I meant more so in the U.S. Pertaining to
US,
kind of our
so
pollution
again,
issues.
if you look at Black neighborhoods, excluding some of the more affluent neighborhoods, if you look at Black neighborhoods as a whole, what's the first thing you typically find in a Black neighborhood? Highways.
More kids.
Not even just kids, but it's highways.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Everybody lives close to a highway.
Yeah. Most Black neighborhoods are generally bisected by some major thoroughway. You can go to white neighborhoods and they be on streets, but you don't have a major highway. Again, I'm originally from Chicago, so I grew up on the south side of Chicago, and and I'm sure Complex can speak to this because his wife was from Chicago as well. But the Black part of town of Chicago is bisected by the 90-94 major interstate. This interstate runs west to east. So you could take the 90 all the way from Chicago all the way into upstate New York. So this is a major thoroughway. And if you look at Dallas, Texas, same thing. You look at Miami, there's a very good documentary that was on, I think it was on either Amazon or Netflix, about how Miami was once a Black town.
I'm also thinking the 90 that can take you not only up to upstate New York, that'll take you up into Massachusetts as well.
Exactly.
Yeah, I know that for a fact.
Yeah, I used to, like I said, I used to live in upstate New York when I was in the military, so I know
more. Near Albany?
I was north of that. I was north of Syracuse. I was like maybe about 20 minutes from the border. I was in the 10th Mountain Division, so it's about as far north in New York as you can go before you get to the Canadian border.
You talking about like Dannemora?
What's that?
You know Dannemora?
No. You ever heard of Watertown?
Of course I know Watertown. Yes, I do.
Yep.
Absolutely.
Don't forget that Brother Nagone is a Syracuse Orangeman, right?
Yeah, sure. I went to school there.
I was stationed in Fort Drum, New York, which is about an hour north of Syracuse.
Yep.
And so I used to actually go when I was a medic. in the Army, I used to do a lot of training at the Syracuse Medical Center. So we used to drive down there a couple times a week to do training and stuff. But yeah, I'm very familiar with upstate New York and all that stuff. So very familiar. Know it like the back of my hand. So, yeah.
Highway 80, hit 80 up there.
Yeah. Yes.
You know what time that is.
Yeah.
Hey, guys, I stepped away for a minute. I was warming up my daughter's food, but I was cracking the hell up going at you getting on Noah about milk. Because he and I have had I don't know how many discussions about drinking milk.
That's just for cows, man.
Noah said he's still there, dude. But he and I probably had the same discussion like 2-3 times, and I'd be like, dude, you're not supposed to be drinking milk. Forget it.
Yeah, Noah's like Bart Simpson, man. You know, don't have a cow, man.
Oh man, dude, I was rolling.
Man, funny.
Let's give our closing thoughts before we close out.
Yeah. Well, I'll just close it out with just these last comments about pollution. You know, in general, we know that there are many plants, you know, whether they're, you know, car manufacturing plants that were typically located near Black neighborhoods, and there was unprecedented amounts of pollution that came from those plants. As a result, I mean, you know, people that are, you know, lived in Europe, you know, you can talk about the Danube River and stuff like that, and see some of the effects of that. And again, you know, if you're in the Great Lakes region specifically in Wisconsin, Illinois, you know, it's very well known that, you know, those became major, the Lake Michigan became a major thoroughway because they used to have slaughterhouses along the lakes, you know, and they used to ship them from Chicago up into Wisconsin and further up and vice versa. And also too, Chicago is also one of the major transportation hubs in the country. So again, a lot of these plants and whether car manufacturing, as I said before, even power plant, many of them tend to be near Black neighborhoods. And again, we know that we consider things like radiation from electrical power lines and stuff like that. Some of these major power lines, we know that these things give off radiation, and you know there's a lot of, you know, there's studies on this. There's the stories on it, the stories about these things. So you know, a lot of these things are there. You know, again, you know, a lot of it's not necessarily empirically proven. However, you know, we all have these lived experiences. And so, you know, we suspect a lot of things happen. You know, here in Wisconsin, there's a small town in Wisconsin called Beloit, and there was a series of Black men who were developing some rare forms of cancer, like multiple myeloma, which is a rare blood cancer. Only about 1 in 200,000 people get it. You know, but it's a rare cancer that, you know, that has no real course of treatment for it. But again, you know, these things occur, and you know, and in this particular town, they were very well known for having a Chrysler plant for a number of years.
Yeah.
And so, you know, these are just things that we can just speak of subjectively, but you know, we can also see it as well, and you know, we kind of draw those inferences and kind of sort of make these internal correlations. But again, you know, this is why it's so important for more brothers, and specific Black people in general, but especially brothers, to get into the healthcare, into the biosciences, into research and stuff like that. Because I mean, again, you cannot expect white folks to solve this problem for us.
No, as like John Henry Clark said, the conquered doesn't worry about the people they conquer. Something that's right.
Doesn't worry about the conquered.
Yes. I think that's interesting. I was also
closing thoughts, Thalia?
No, that's it. I was just thinking, you know, Black people got a lot of work to do. That's all.
All right. Raining Woman, you've been quiet. Any closing thoughts from you? I think she's moderating.
Oh, there she is.
Good evening, everyone. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
Yeah, hear you.
All right. Peace to everyone on the panel, the Black Brain Trust, all the contributors, and everyone in the chat. I just want to say, first of all, this was another exceptional dialogue. And I wanted to add a little bit to the conversation, but I do know how to let the men speak. So I found an article that there's going to be an extension for the GI Bill for STEM education for veterans. And I dropped the link in the chat.
Yeah, it's the
So,
Biotech.
yeah.
Yep, that tech. Mm-hmm.
So salute to all the veterans because I am a veteran as well. And I'm going to go ahead and fall back and let you guys finish up. Thank you again.
All right.
Thank you.
Anybody else want any closing thoughts?
Yeah, no, hey, man, another good one. As usual. Thank you to all the contributors tonight. Dahlia, thank you for stopping by. Dr. Phoenix, Gabe A was in for a little bit. Lowcast was in for a little bit. Triple X was in for a little bit, and then everybody who's still here, Anti-Gravity DE, Mike, as usual. And then also just a shout out to the rest of the Brain Trust and everyone that stopped on in. Tomorrow's geopolitics.
Yeah, great show, guys. Another great one. So, Brain Trust doing their thing. Great to have a lot of great people on the panel here. I wasn't here for everyone, but I did fall through and I saw a lot of great commentary. Dr. Phoenix, man, your input highly. We have a word here. We say highly butter laid. That's highly butter laid, and I think everyone else came in with a lot of very, very good stuff. So thank you very much. And Reigning Woman, we love you. Anyhow, so that's it.
Oh yeah, just thank you to Will and not Will, Mike and Complex for having me on. Really appreciate the opportunity to speak to everyone. Thank you.
Great stuff.
No problem.
Can I say? I'd like to say thank you to Dr. Phoenix, bro. I mean, it shows me how many black men have so much knowledge, they're just not talking. And I would like to see more brothers like you stand up and give their, share their knowledge. Because before, when brothers stood up and shared their knowledge, they would get cut off. They'll get attacked and they have to step back. Now we have a number of brothers standing up. And the more we stand up and share the knowledge, the more we pass the knowledge around, it makes it more difficult to keep it under the radar, to keep one person under the radar because everybody else has that knowledge. And that's what I'm enjoying seeing. That's one of the reasons why I'm here. Serious. It's fun listening to you guys, but this is such a serious subject. I'm serious. It's like making my heart like purr almost. I'm enjoying it. That's why I shut up. That's why I was silent for the whole program. Because I start thinking, what I have to say is only gonna change the flow, and I didn't want to change that flow. But thank you guys so much tonight.
Good stuff, DE. I agree, man. I agree.
Anti-Gravity, you have any closing thoughts? Milk?
I was going to say he might be drinking some milk right now.
Anything milk related?
Milk.
He's back there getting swole.
You getting swole. You getting swole, Will? You getting swole, bro? You getting swole?
No closing thoughts for me tonight, but it was a good talk. Dr. Phoenix laying down some fire tonight.
But to get you some catnip too.
All right, y'all. Peace.
All right.
All right. Peace to everyone.